Liberal Currents presents Half the Answer with your hosts, Caitlin M. Green and Trent R. Nelson.
Well, happy days are somewhere, and that's all I'll say about that. And this is Half the Answer, where understanding a question is half the answer. And I am, of course, your co-host, Caitlin Green. Here is Trent R. Nelson. We work for Liberal Currents as authors and editors. We are scholars of various items such as language and history and philosophy. I'll leave it to you to figure out which one does which. And of course, we have a guest. Trent, who's our guest today?
Well, Caitlin, we have spent so much time digging through the American circumstance, digging through how we got here, stuff about the president, about his goons, his cronies. And it's been a lot. It's been tiresome. We've had such wonderful guests. And today is no different, except, Caitlin, that we're not so much talking about these United States of America. Instead, we are in the midst of our Eurosode. Hey! Well, for our Eurosode, we have the marvelous return of RoteRote, of Hunter CG. You know him less well than we do, let's be honest. We're his friends. Hunter, he is everywhere that you'd like to be, including Europe, including the United Kingdom, including Belgique, named after the beautiful tribe. Shout out to the Romans. Hunter, well, you were here last time to speak about the Save America Act, and you let us know how terrible it would be for folks who've changed their name, for women, for people with hyphenated names, wink, wink. Well, Hunter, we would be remiss if we did not ask you how that has gone since last we spoke. But to be sure, we're here to talk about what's going on in Europe and why there are little fire spots on it. That's interesting, right? We know that Hungary is a big topic, and we know that there's a lot else going on over there. Well, welcome back, my friend. How have you been?
I have been as good as you can be during this particular moment in time. So it's a gradation scale. But you know, I've got my health and I'm still existing in this plane of reality. So I guess it's all up from there.
Man, don't brag. Come on. Some of us have had a little bit of a spotty history with that particular topic.
No. Honestly, it's we've reached the point where it's like 2 days in a row without a nuclear detonation, and you're like, oh, I guess things are not too bad. Which makes you realize, like, man, the Cuban Missile Crisis guys had it easy. They just did one version of that. We do it every 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, what is this thing with 2 weeks? Like, why is he so obsessed with, like, resetting the clock to 2 weeks and being like, all right, now you have 2 more weeks to gradually begin to panic again?
Someone explained to him what the word fortnight meant, and then he's all about it. He's like, everything's a fortnight. It's always a fortnight.
You have but a fortnight. Yeah, and now he thinks he's Shakespeare. Cool.
Don't tell him what a score is. If he learns what a score is, we might be in real trouble here.
That might actually kill him, so, you know.
Getting Trump to be super nationalistic about measurement units would be like the most intellectual thing he's ever been involved in.
Oh my God.
He's like,
sir, it's actually very America first.
Oh my God.
It's going to be so good. Well, you know, if we can't prank the president, what's the point, right?
Right.
It used to be what democracy is.
I thought so. I was under the impression that we got to make fun of the president, and all he could do was like laugh and pretend he didn't hurt him. You know, like that's what all the old presidents used to do, right?
Not this
even the
one,
ones
though.
I don't like would be like, "Oh, that was kind of funny," even though like you made fun of me for saying something I've literally never said. I'm looking at you, Dana Carvey. He never said not gonna do it, but it does work so well.
Incredible.
It works so
yeah,
well.
you just you can make it a part of their thing, and then everybody just assumes that it is, and that's the beauty of parody.
And by the way, a secret one that everyone should take a check out if you haven't is definitely the Dan Aykroyd Jimmy Carter skit, because that shit is so funny. Jimmy Carter is helping somebody who called in high on LSD. And
I know this, yeah.
And his whole staff is like, all right, next caller, and he's like, no, let me handle this.
It's like, no, this guy needs my help.
It's so fucking funny. Definitely worth. We'll have
for
it
that to be like the way that the media sees you. Like, take me back. I guess I'm a return guy for Jimmy Carter now. Fuck it.
Fuck it.
You're gonna build yourself some marble statues of Jimmy Carter, and we're gonna get back there together.
Yeah. I'm going to put them in the town square. I don't care how many civilizations I have to burn down. I want to get us back there.
This is the penultimate part of Woke 2. It's erecting massive 100-meter tall, and we're using meters now because it's super woke.
It's going to be
meter tall statues of Jimmy Carter. That's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's going to be Jimmy
not all
Carter.
of them are standing head to foot. We got upside down ones, sideways, planking. We got Jimmy's.
We're avant-garde, okay? We're critical theorists.
Look, with all these
postmodernists.
tariffs, there's not that much that isn't tariff-free, and statues is one of the only things. So, just throwing it out there.
There should be so many more statues.
His Cooking with Congress episode, also amazingly good. Jimmy Carter had a very interesting diet. He loved coffee, and he loved the ham dish where you pour the coffee into the grease, making a coffee pork sauce to eat your ham.
Don't
with. I mean,
piss me off, Trent.
This guy is onto some shit that we haven't even thought of yet.
He did live for 1 million years old. But we should also talk about someone who is like the ontological opposite of Jimmy Carter, Viktor Orban of Hungary.
I just want to give a little breaking news because it's very funny to me, which is that JD Vance went over to Hungary to like stump for Orban, and he was like, I'm here because our whole deal is so the same and we are buddies, and you should, when you think Orban, you should think Trump and Vance. And then what happened to Orban's polling immediately went down. That's delicious.
That's the JD Vance effect right there.
That's the JD Vance promise. I'm going to come hang out with you, and then something bad is going to happen. Either you're the Pope and you're going to fucking die, or you're Orban and your numbers are going to go down. And that's just put that in my coffee because it's delicious.
We got to send JD Vance back to America to hang out with the president, because we got to get this magic.
Trump knows not to go anywhere near him.
Do you think it's a proximity thing, or does Trump get more popular the further Vance is away, or is just like the aura that surrounds Vance has like a certain area of effect? Like if we're D&D ruling this, like how is this aura of this null zone of Riz that is emitted?
Yeah, how many squares away do you have to be?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that like sending Vance to Hungary. In meters, right?
Right. Meters, yeah.
I don't think that sending Vance over to Hungary helped Trump at all. Like, I don't think Trump had any positive effects from getting him as far away from him as Europe. So I don't know. I think it must have. It's to like do
being
more
around
with,
radiation. Like you don't gain any positives, you just don't take any negatives, right? So, so you send him away, you get him out. And like I can breathe a little easier, like a normal person is able to. Yeah,
JD
my
Vance
baseline.
Is like you're like radiation. Yes, I think that's actually probably the most apt and intellectual way we could view it. But I also think the other half of this is that Vance is just like the last person in a conga line of right wing leaders that have been pumping up Viktor Orban for months and months. And if you can think of a politician from around the world that doesn't personally hate Viktor Orban, they've made a video for him in the last few months. And it's like every single person you can imagine. He's even got some reels on TikTok that are just like one leader after another, just being like, Viktor Orban is the most amazing man. He's 10 feet tall. He can save children from an orphanage. And he once birthed my dog's puppies. But then you're like, oh, but aren't you a fascist also saying these things? So it's like you basically have to be like in to Orban to have that resonate with you, because if you think any of those people are assholes, you're going to be like, well, I don't know why they like Viktor so much.
Right.
Yeah. This is a major PR problem where like there's no cool or normal people that are like going to be out stumping for Orban. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, but they are still trying, which I think is kind of like I mean, in many ways, it's kind of like a heartening thing, right? Because there is a lot of international attention on this one election. They are pushing really fucking hard for Viktor because he's such an important character in this global right-wing network. Like, he's one of the most important people putting on the events, organizing the think tanks, doing all this stuff, bringing the North American side and the European side together. Like, he's really, really active in this, and not just him, but his party. And through their control of the government, they are able to like wield even more powers, and also like extending it out to the European Union as a whole. Viktor Orban basically unilaterally blocks so many things one after another. Right. So it's like it's amazing seeing him at like 10% behind 3 days before the election when we're recording, and he's not really able to get out of this still. Like he's not able to do anything magical. He can't, his normal tricks aren't working, and really he's banking on like he's messed with the system enough that his minority amount of votes still makes him the prime minister. And that's not through like a coalition or anything, just like he fucked with the system real hard. So there is a possibility everything kind of wobbles in that direction. But I mean, he's very unpopular. Like he's a very unpopular guy.
Hunter, on this program, we have previously discussed Hungary and Viktor Orban. But for our listeners who somehow missed our first discussions regarding this, I believe one was with Alan Elrod. What is the deal with Hungary? What is the deal with Viktor Orban? What is the deal with Peter Magyar? And what is the deal with Fidesz in general? Because I know that not everybody delves into all of our beautiful European brothers and sisters like you have. Can you kind of give us a quick synopsis, as quickly as you possibly can, regarding like how we got here and why this is such a sort of potential watershed moment?
So we have to go back around 16, 17 years to kind of the first round of Viktor rising up. He assumes power for the first time 16 years ago, but he had been cooking around in Hungarian politics for a long time. Even as a very, very young man, he was still active in politics in the last part of the Eastern Bloc communist state that was in Hungary as well. So he is a creature of this like earlier regime that comes into his own in like the 90s and early 2000s, and he manages to effectively rise himself up in this party called Fidesz, which at the time was presenting itself as like a reformer party, like a really normal, like early 2000s, like center left on some things, center right on other things, normie party. And that's what he basically sold himself. He's like, I'm super pro EU. I'm going to do like all this modern stuff. We're going to leave behind the past, blah, 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 blah. So people voted for him in droves because in the 90s and in the early 2000s, Hungary's economy and politics were extra crazy. Obviously, it's a post-Eastern Bloc breakup state that had to deal with all of the things happening all the time. It's also a country that was bordering Yugoslavia during all of the Balkan Wars, which was dealing with a constant stream of refugees coming in. So it was not in an opportune time or moment. And this is something that makes it very easy for people to start thinking like, this guy sounds good. Like, this guy is promising stuff and I believe in him. So let's roll the dice. And so Viktor comes in. And at the beginning, no one thinks too much about it. But as time starts to slowly go on, and after his first election, he started to shift intensely, not just to the right, but to the far right. And also seeing himself not just as a player in Europe and in the European Union as a whole, which is a union of 27 countries together, but seeing himself as one of the most important people to kind of bridge the center-right divide and also the international framing around it. So he starts quite early trying to figure out ways to turn the state to not only enrich himself and his allies and his political party, but also to push his ideological beliefs into every aspect of Hungarian society. So this is where we start seeing the intense efforts to control the media, to control not just your television media, but your print media, your radio, your online spaces, and doing this not only in the formal settings, but doing this also in rural areas so that they would have basically complete control of the communication space outside of major cities. And this becomes a big problem because very quickly, Fidesz with, you have to understand that, like, this is a system that effectively hit a hard reset in the early 90s. So a lot of things got privatized. A lot of institutions are just getting set up. And so everything is relatively new. And newness means it doesn't have stability. It also doesn't have the big reaction people will have to something being taken away or changed quite quickly, because you don't have a norm really associated in the first place. And this also starts going on with the universities. And he went very aggressively on basically trying to take over all the public and all the private universities and turn them over to basically like board of directors that were all Fidesz people or allies of Viktor or sometimes his relatives. And this meant that now not only were communications being controlled by him, but also every institution was controlled by him. And not in this like heavy-handed way of the Trump administration, but by surgically removing out all of the people that were in decision-making positions and replacing them. So this isn't like trying to convince the president of Harvard to do something. This is like, I'm just going to replace the president of Harvard, but not only them, every single person in every department on the top level, and like go like deep into these things.
Yeah.
At this point, like some universities even flee the country, setting up shop in other places. And this is like a real deal thing. It's also important to understand, like, Hungary and specifically Budapest has a massive academic like sector, and it always has for like its entire history. Mm-hmm. So like these are not like new universities getting taken over. These are like incredibly old, prestigious ones, some of them dating back to medieval times. So in that way, it is literally like taking over all the Harvards within this country that's like really values academia.
This is just the point where I started to become aware of Orban, because I was looking at academic freedom and like the academic freedom organizations that exist in the United States, and the way that they kept praising Orban. And I was like, that doesn't sound right. And it's because, of course, they're actually looking for essentially a conservative leg up in academia, and they thought maybe this is the way to get it.
Yeah. And he was also very pioneering, not only in this like this way of going after these institutions in this much more concerted and strategic way, as opposed to kind of, the 90s, 2000s kind of Republicans in the US were trying to like basically do a lot of like cry bullying and shaming to stop institutions doing things, instead of like trying to wield the state to make that happen. Or they would just do like what Bobby Jindal did in my home state of Louisiana, which was like trying to radically privatize everything and hoping that would kind of like fix it for them. Orban realized those strategies were not functional, and they didn't actually achieve the goal you wanted, and also within the speed you wanted to achieve it, because speed is also quite important. And if you want to kind of like reform a society around you, you have to move in this kind of like revolutionary like pace, and you have to continuously like put more and more institutions off kilter so that no one's ever really able to solidify around you. By him taking over the public media, the private media, the public institutions and the private institutions, and then not only that, going after civil society institutions through basically these like foreign agent laws that were very much on the forefront in Hungary and also in the Russian Federation. He keeps everyone basically just fighting to stay into existence, and thus they're not able to form around him. They're just kind of like looking out for themselves. And this was like a lot of the early period of like Orban's shift, and why it was so hard for kind of a Hungarian society to bounce back, because it was happening very quickly and everyone was basically looking out for themselves. And at the same time, on the political end, this is a multi-party system. It's not just like two parties. It wasn't just like Fidesz and one other party that we had to like jostle with. So like every political party is now at this point trying to maintain their little part of Hungary or their constituencies or whatever. And they're focused on kind of like damage control and stemming the bleeding and triage, instead of thinking like we need to do a whole society, like one block alliance to beat him. So like we do this. Everyone was very much like, we're going to run in all the elections like normal and try to do this in a normal way, and we'll just beat them and the democracy will self-correct. And that really screwed them over for a couple of elections. Not only that, this is so like all these things Orban's doing, taking over institutions, is happening. But then he's at the same time really pushing the propaganda. The propaganda is intense. It is all the time. And it's also very cutting edge, and cutting edge for the time periods he's starting to implement it in. Stuff that we saw like in 2016 in the US was already happening in Hungary several years before that. So like we were getting a lot of the backlog of like how you would run that level of like intense disinformation campaign where you're like, you're not even remotely trying to pretend you're selling politics as like anything you're doing or your record. You're just selling like illusions and more illusions, both for positive and negative. So this is all going on, and this is all very bad. And we have to move forward in time. There's a lot of like drama and corruption and all these other things. But for the most part, every time there was some real bad thing that went down, Viktor was very adept at using his media control, institutional control, to basically roll his way out of it, or someone would fall on their sword and they would get kicked out the party, or they would just make it go away. And because there was always like chaotic things happening, not just in Hungary, but also in Europe as a whole, something else would happen in the news cycle. So in this very much this like Teflon Don Trump way of like, if you just keep crazy shit happening, then they kind of wipe each other out. This was super effective for Viktor for a really, really long time, until it wasn't. And then he started having major problems. So this is where we bring in our second main character, Peter Magyar. So Peter is the ex-husband to the former justice minister of Hungary. She was involved in a wacky scandal, several, but the last one's the most important, where she pardoned someone involved in pedophilia. And this was caught on a recording of her admitting to doing this under Viktor Orban's direction by her ex-husband, Peter Magyar, who then, during their divorce, posted this on Facebook and Instagram, and everyone in the country heard it. And everyone was like, what the fuck? Because this wasn't like some journalist saying it. This was like the guy married to the justice minister. and this is like her, that obviously, on a recording.
Messy.
So hold on. Hunter, you're telling me that in some countries, pedophile scandals can lead to the deterioration of a government?
Yes, but they have to be pedophile scandals that also involve religious things. They can't just be by themselves. I think that's the kicker. Hungarian people are quite religious, but in general, not my friends. But I mean, I wish it would work in the US. Unfortunately, it just doesn't seem to. So anyway, Hungarians get really fucking angry about this, because this is like the straw that breaks the camel's back. They're like year 15 of fucking Viktor Orban. Like, they're like, nah, man, this is too much. Like, you're stealing, everything's shit. Cost of living keeps skyrocketing. We're making less money. We've got all this stuff. The gas prices are fucked because you didn't do any energy transition. So the Ukraine war stuff is like kicking back hard. Like, no, this sucks. Like, screw this. And there's like an anger in the public, and this would have petered out if something else really important didn't happen, which is Peter Magyar, member of Fidesz, old party member, been there for a very long time, married to a minister, initiated a party split, which effectively split Fidesz in half and meant that half of all the people that knew where all the skeletons were, where all the assets were how to do everything, how to run a whole political party, and also functionally how they run Fidesz on an internal level, moved over to him. And they start up their new party, TISA. And TISA is another conservative party. Like, we shouldn't like valorize it as like a progressive alternative. It's just like not the dictator's party, but this is kind of the reality of the moment, which is like not the dictator's party is the guy you need to vote for to get rid of the dictator. So he splits off, forms his own party, and then people start rallying around him because Peter Magyar is objectively an incredibly good-looking man and very good at public speaking. And so
are you saying that Magyar mogs Orban?
I honestly, when we were talking earlier about the Vance thing, I was just thinking about, I was like, Peter Magyar looks like he mogs both Orban and JD Vance. They're just both, soy-faced tubby boys. And, Peter Magyar is like Chad Zilla over there. Yeah,
Hunter.
I know. That's our world now. I should have never listened to that. Those episodes about, what's his name?
Clavicular?
Yeah, I can't remember. It was like Behind the Bastards or something. Did one on him, and I was like, I waited a
don't know.
month to
I know
watch it, and then I'm like, I need to know now. I need to know what the fuck people are
In
talking
Bed
about.
with the Right just covered it, and so it all is like refreshed for me because Moira and Adrian talked about it. But like, oh my god, that guy, he's like 4 years old and on meth. Like, why do we have to care about him? But
Yeah,
here we are. And
whenever I
also, he
hear
doesn't
about-
pull. Like, I need to be so very clear about this child, right? He simply is so unpleasant that like he knows when he does his IRL streaming, he's like, I'm going to go to the club. He barely even approaches women because he's aware of how repugnant he is. But he's doing it for the boys. Like, that's what it's for. So he's jester maxing and he's frame mogging and he's whatever, but he's not frame mogging. He's being brutally frame mogged. Like, oh my god.
That's what all of this shit has always been. It's always been like, this is what like men think that other men like are interested in, or what. And and for some incredible reason, they're correct to varying degrees because like men don't even watch. You know,
a point which is addressed on the In Bed with the Right episode. I do recommend it because I think they do a good job, because they come at it from like a gender studies perspective where they're like, listen, this is the same like homosocial, misogynistic sort of performance that we have seen forever in masculinist sort of, you know, male supremacist media, and like this is the same deal. And among, you know, these kind of male supremacist figures, they're doing it for the bros.
And they always had these clubs. Like, we forget that, like, just because the internet hasn't existed forever, just because video hasn't existed, audio, right? Like, there used to be clubs that men would just go to and like talk about shit and like bitch about people and like.
I mean, I remember learning about like, you know, ancient Greek conceptions of gender where like women were the people that you had to consort with if you wanted a baby, but like your spiritual soulmate was going to be a man, because those are the people that you can respect. Those are the people that you can interact with in a way that's like soul enriching and challenging. And so like it's the same deal where it's like they're not interested in engaging with us females for like any reason other than to impress the bros and to like, to ascend, to move up in this like male supremacist hierarchy. It's fun. It's fun to be a girl in the world, you know?
What I love is that the Greeks were like, all right, we definitely feel fulfillment from like men who are educated and like able to communicate with us. Like, but that education, I guess, has nothing to do with women. Like, so I guess like women are just bad to talk to. Like, and it has nothing to do with the education that we esteem for men. It's just like, no, it's just ridiculous.
The divine spark thing that they just simply don't have, like, because they don't have jizz. So anyway, what were we talking about?
We were talking about how Peter Magyar is very hot, and that's actually quite an important part of the Hungarian election.
And he's like, it's like the Gavin Newsom thing of like, it doesn't really matter if he's actually Satan. He's got a jawline.
Are you Catholic with a chiseled jawline? Like, you might be in, pal.
Yeah, I mean, like, I was joking with one of my friends, Attilia, who runs an EU show called EUNU, and she was just like, my guilty pleasure is how hot Peter Magyar is. And I was just like, if there's one thing the Hungarians have taught us, they're very attractive. Like, that's it. Like, it's a fact. There's a reason the Habsburg had a dual monarchy for 1,000 years.
I have one friend who's a lovely gay gentleman living in Canada, and he sends me a picture every time there's a hot fascist, and he's like, don't get mad at me. And then he sends me the picture. And I'm always like, guess what? I'm mad at you again. Like, he sent me the what's his name? Chansley, the Q shaman guy.
Oh no, dude.
And he's like, Caitlin, you can't be mad at me. And I was like, no, I can. I really
He's
can.
just into crusties. Just send him to New Orleans. He'll get out.
That's exactly it. He has a thing about the beards. And so I'm like, can you just take all that energy and like give it to like Dave Jorgensen, the WAPO guy? Like, just give it to him. Like, just focus on him. Because he's got what you want. Like, and he's not a fucking monster.
Yeah, or he can find one of those guys making artisanal pickles in Portland or something.
Yeah. Honestly, I might just send him you. Like if I think you might do it for him. So and you're not a fascist, so you win.
Points.
No,
Anyway.
Points on the board.
Anyway, so the Viktor is not young. He's been around a very long time. He is a set figure in Hungarians' imaginations. If you have an opinion about him, like it's impossible not to. He is either the only person you have known in your entire life because it's most of your life, or it's like you're literally living under a rock. That's the only options. So everyone is like basically set. There's not much movement to go in the polls. He can only really go down. This is just like the reality. And Magyar has been really, really, really clever. He's done a district by district campaigning tour, I guess. Feels more like an odyssey, but he's gone to literally every town and village in the country. So there's very few towns and villages in that whole country that he has not physically gone to in the last year. And that, even though like Hungary is not the biggest country in the world, that is still like a wildly impressive thing to be able to do. Yeah. And he has, in very many ways, this kind of like Obama ability that like when he goes to a physical location and does an event, he starts polling better there. And it's just like you can see it one place after another. I mean, this is kind of like the doomsday scenario on Viktor's side, right? It's like if the election didn't happen now and like it was in 6 months, he would lose even bigger because they would get to know this guy even more. And because everyone kind of doesn't trust the media, who doesn't already trust the media, that means that any lie that Viktor comes out with, whether it's in print or video or posters everywhere about Peter Magyar, people just assume it's bullshit. Like they're just immediately assume it's bullshit. So even if something real
he came to
existed,
my town and he was very nice. So
yeah. So people are just like, they talk a lot of shit about him. I saw him in the village. He was super nice. He gave a good speech. That's it. And like, that's what people want. Like but like, you have to understand, like people are so tired and need something. They need a hero right now. And even the people who aren't looking for kind of a messianic figure, they understand the pragmatic ability of it, the pragmatic moment. Yeah. About a year ago, I was chatting with some friends who were in the Hungarian Social Democratic Party, and they were basically determining in their party at the moment, do they run in the elections like a normal political party, or do they not run any candidates and let Tiza try and beat Orban? Like that was like the deepest question of every political party about a year ago, was like, do we do a normal election, or do we like roll the dice, hope this works, and this is what gets them out? And basically every party rolled with that direction, except for the ones that are in alliance with Fidesz, which are basically like two even more weird right-wing parties, even in Hungarian politics. So, things are really aligning. And I think you've seen in the wild escalation the last couple of days from Viktor's side, why he's so panicked and why I'm very confident he's going to lose. So to roll us back to more recent events, 2 weeks ago, Viktor Orban had the state police arrest a money truck from the Austrian state bank and a Ukrainian state bank that was transferring euros and dollars and gold bullion, and kidnap these guys who are still being held in Budapest because Viktor basically came up with a conspiracy theory that this is like secret money going to Ukraine, blah, 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 and has seized like tens of millions in cash and gold. That's the first wild thing that went off. Then he started, before he was already cooking like this idea that like Volodymyr Zelensky is trying to assassinate me and overthrow the election. And this has been like the nonstop thing in Hungarian politics, I would say, for the last like 2 or so years. Ironically, in the last election, Orban ran on like a very pro-Ukrainian line. But now, like everything you could imagine, you stub your toe, it's Ukraine. You go to the grocery store and they don't have your favorite sauce, it was Ukraine. So it is the answer for everything right now with Viktor. And yesterday, when Vance was there, he decided to take his Ukraine conspiracy up to the next level, with JD Vance saying that the Ukrainian intelligence had manipulated the US elections to prevent Trump from winning, meaning in, I guess, 2020 in his imaginary world. So this is like the line now, basically, that like Ukraine super spies are everywhere in the world. Anytime a right-wing figure loses, it's because of them. You've seen this actually pop up in a few other smaller elections in Europe the last few months, all based around this kind of like Orban conspiracy. And this is really dangerous because we have millions stolen, people kidnapped. Orban literally 3 days ago cooked up a fake terrorist attack. He said that a pipeline was blown up, and then the journalists from Serbia like drove out there to the pipeline. They're like, "There's nothing here. Like, there's nothing here." Yeah, right. But like, it's insane. But it's like you have to treat this as a real thing because it's like an actual world leader saying these nuts things, and it's not just him. Because like Viktor came out with like the president of Serbia, and they both were like, "Yes, this thing actually really, really happened." It did not actually really, really happen. They just both are allies politically, and they needed to make it look like it's happening. And especially if you're like a Central Eastern European right winger, if you can just convince everyone in your country that like Ukraine is this super boogeyman that's controlling everything, you've basically like bootstrapped your way back into like, you know, like an protocols of the elders of Zion level theory of conspiracy thing. And it's very dangerous. It's very bad. And it's unfortunately going to last past the election. Because I think this is very much like the line for a lot of the far right now, is that you can kind of turn the conversation away from Donald Trump, like any critique that would kind of blow back from that, if you just reframe everything around Ukraine. And you present yourself as like, I will keep us out of war, which is a big deep point of Orban's campaign, but also that, but we're not just keeping you out of war because I don't like war. It's also because it's like they're evil puppet masters, blah, 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 blah. And this is a very powerful narrative, unfortunately.
There is no keeping us out of war as there are troops marching towards us. I mean, I feel as though it's selling the emperor's clothes to the emperor. You're eventually going to have to stand up to a group that is not only trying to take over Ukraine, but I suspect has desires towards like other countries as well in the area. It wants to pick off all of the non-connected nations of Eastern Europe, just as authoritarianism has long sought to do. You mentioned the Eastern Bloc earlier. This is just a new iteration of that attempt to have satellite states, to have allies that are right next to the EU, which Vladimir Putin despises. He despises that organization. He despises the power that they hold. And people, groups like in Hungary and Italy, Serbia, they're just carrying water for the fascists. Why is it so believable to so many people, Hunter? Why is it more believable that Ukraine is the boogeyman than the nation that started a terrible war of conquest against Ukraine and much of the EU?
I think there's a few.
Can I answer as JD Vance?
Yes, let's go.
Because of what he said when he was in Hungary. So they were talking about Ukraine. First of all, he was like, yeah, we know that they totally put their thumb on the scale in the election, the Ukrainians. And then he wanted to talk about the conflict, right? And so he says the seeds of this war, the seeds of this conflict were actually planted well before the fighting started. And they were planted when European leaders decided that they were going to go deep into a particular energy economy, that they were going to cut themselves off from oil and natural gas that came from the East. That was a huge mistake then. And it's obvious that it's a huge mistake now. And it's funny when I hear people accuse my president, for example, of being pro-Russia. My president has done more to help Europe out with energy and liquid natural gas than anybody in the world, which weakens Russia because we would love our allies and our friends to pursue smart energy policies so their consumers can pay less money. But also when, God forbid, there's a conflict, they can rely on us rather than another country for the energy that they need. So that answers that question, right?
So the White House's position is you should have more Russian gas and more American gas.
Yeah, it was really dumb of you to try to pivot away from oil and gas, and now you're reaping the results of that. So you're welcome.
It's your fault. It's your fault for trying
you
to
did
do
this
your
to
own
yourself.
thing.
Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself, Europe.
Man, he's such a prick. God, I hate that guy. He's so bad. I hope Trump doesn't die mainly because of that.
I know, honestly.
Yeah, it'd be so bad. There's no way he'd become president otherwise. But yeah,
No.
so hot takes.
I don't know.
all
Did you
around.
hear he's lost weight? So now he might actually not be mogged or whatever by Gavin Newsom.
I mean,
So
I guess
he could do
we
it
can
now.
all get Ozempic, right?
Yeah, if he can just show some ab, I think we'll be good to go on the whole Vance 2028 prospect.
I can't wait for JB Pritzker to absolutely smoke the shit out of these people. I am beyond excited to watch
Right?
the governor of Illinois absolutely scrub the deck with these losers. And it's going to be so funny because not only is he more intelligent than them, but he's also a much better speaker than they are. And I think that is going to be something that I'm looking forward to, Hunter, to be sure.
Well, I'm sorry to tell you, Trent, but I am canceling JB Pritzker right now. So we do have to look elsewhere because he had Jonathan Haidt on his whatever
I hate
he does. Exactly, right? So now I'm mad at Pritzker,
Wait,
and
he has
I'm
a
going to need a
podcast?
personal
Is there a
apology.
Pritzker pod?
I don't know what it was. It was he does some kind of like
It
video.
better be called the
interview
Pritzker
thing
pod because
anyway.
that's
The Pritzker
just
pod.
that's just gold waiting there for him. Yeah. Well, that's another episode. We are not pro Jonathan Haidt here on this program, but
No,
also
I think he's the worst.
out of all of the podcast guests, I still think Gavin Newsom holds it down.
Yeah, for sure.
being the
He's
worst.
done much worse.
You mean the progressive leadership of California featuring Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk pre-dying, and Mr.
Michael fucking Savage.
Oh, right. Oh, God, there were so many more.
Dude,
just
I
thinking
watched
about
that
Shapiro.
episode. I'm still not recovered.
Yeah,
Shapiro too.
whoever's in charge of booking his guests needs a strong talking to be sure. So Hunter, thank you for catching us up to speed regarding what the hell's going on in Hungary.
But your question, I didn't answer.
I know.
I know. Why is it so easy?
Because I interrupted.
Why is it so easy to go in? Because I think this is actually quite important. So, first level reason: Hungarians speak Hungarian. Mind blown, right? But specifically, rural communities, older communities will speak exclusively Hungarian, which means there's not a lot of outside content in Hungarian being created. So if you're able to industrial produce Hungarian content like we can with modern communications, then you can really blot out the sun in a way that's way more effective than you could do in English or even German or other countries that have multiple countries that speak that language, but also that it's not so centralized into one country with that dominance. So that's like a structural issue. Then you have the totality of the control within like the rural areas of the country. So while you might have like normal access to news in like Budapest and like the cities, once you go to like further and further out areas, once you get older and older crowds, then they're effectively only listening to Orban stuff. And even if it's not directly the Orban stuff, it's something associated with him because it's not just he owns the main channel, he owns several layers around it too. So you have this reality tunnel that's been crafted for years and years and years and years that is being pushed at you way more intensely because it's not just like a Fox News or Fox News OAN and Newmax. It's everything. It's all of the stations. It's like what we have being put into effect now in the US, but even more intense. It's given 16 years of maturation. The other side of it is that European newscasters and news agencies just in general, Hungarian and non-Hungarian, have been very shit about covering the Ukrainian war. Like this is just like a reality of it. It is a third, fourth, fifth thing that people think about now. It's not the main deal that's happening on a day-to-day basis. And this is really, really bad because it allows a lot of people in Europe to basically forget that a massive war has been going on in Eastern Europe for 4 years straight. And this allows you to create illusions and conspiracy around it. This also isn't really helped by the fact that you have like the Russian government doing a bunch of like anti-Ukraine stuff. And then you also have lots of like freelance or other groups that are also pumping out this stuff. And then even on the, the further left, you have also people who do like crazy anti-Ukraine conspiracy stuff. So there was a very ripe world to kind of like spread conspiracy theories around that particular conflict. And if you're able to do it at a big scale and in Hungarian, then you can do a lot of damage. This is like a similar effect to like last year, where we had like the Romanian elections were hit with like crazy propaganda and foreign influence. And like from an American, like, understanding of politics, with like big dollar values just being spent on individual Senate and congressional races, it doesn't seem that crazy. But when you think about it in the context of these very small countries with specific languages to that country, you can do crazy damage with the same budget you would use for one congressional campaign in an entire European country. And this is what people, I think, in Europe still struggle to reckon with. Like, they know intellectually that big money in politics has huge effects, but they don't really understand the magnitude difference between like big money in a European sense and big money in like an objective American sense of that. And what states or very rich people can do individually to flood money in. This is why I think it's like so hard. And it's not just like the direct stuff, and the direct media, but then it's the fact that like Orban has all these think tanks and other institutions that create supporting evidence and sources to back up all the made up bullshit. So you create having like these deep layered cakes of background into your propaganda, which makes it feel so fucking real, right? Because you have all these officials from everywhere and your favorite influencer and the newscaster and everybody saying the same thing back to you for over a decade. And this is, and you have to also like think, because it might not make sense because you're like, well, Hungary's still in the European Union. It doesn't have like a China Great Firewall. Like, they can still go search for the stuff on the internet. And you'd be completely correct with this. But we also know, even in the US, that like you have to know who to go look for and where to go look for that information. You need to be taught how to research and parse the news and consume a large amount of it, so you could kind of figure out where the middle like truth of it all is.
Hunter,
and that is,
are you telling us that understanding a question is half of an answer?
God damn it,
I am
Trent.
telling you that learning how to think about thinking is the most important thing in the world. And all of our professors would be very proud of us right now.
Oh, man, you got me.
But yeah, that's it.
I mean, all that is true. But, also it's just a fact that, there was something like nibbling the corners of my rice bags in the garage. And I went out there and checked, and it was Zelensky. He was out there. He was
he's everywhere these days.
Sabotaging my emergency food storage. It's not good, you guys.
I think also
the other man.
Who's going to stop that man with the rice? Get him out of the rice.
He can't be in there.
No, he shouldn't be in there. He'll get stuck. He could dry out.
Yeah.
But like what you were saying earlier, like why guys like Vucic or Orban or so many of these leaders are really down with this idea of like kind of being a vassal to like whether it's Trump or Putin or a mixture of them, because Orban's clever and so is Vucic. They like to play both Brussels, Moscow, and DC against each other, and also occasionally Beijing. And so it's like they see being beholden to great powers and being it's not about just like dependency, because I don't think that's the right way to look at it, but it's like becoming invaluable to these other powers, whether it's a personal thing or a political thing or normal state level stuff. It's really important to maintain your personal control over a place, or your party's control over a place. You have to really stop like analyzing politics on the idea of like nation states interacting with other nation states. We have to think of like Viktor Orban, this guy who has a family, who's done a bunch of fucking illegal shit, needs to figure out a way that no one goes to jail and he stays in power forever, so he can live in this nice cushy life. And that's it. That's the way they analyze it. And their thinking is, well, if I back the right horse at every point in time and they back me and they'll go to the map with me, which is what I think Victor's currently calculating in his head. He's like, I guarantee there's going to be like crazy level conversations of like could you just disappear him like you did Maduro? Like, could you just say, with the Board of Peace, rule that the election was stolen from me and I'm the real prime minister, right, and then you break diplomatic tie? Like, there's all sorts of like wild things because they're not operating within like the structures of normality or laws or anything. It's just like, what could work to keep me in here?
Yeah.
And that's really
and you can see potential groundwork being laid, right, with the conspiracy theories and everything of like, well, maybe we just say Zelensky stole the election for him, and we have to intervene because it's unfair.
I also think it's you can see this in the general trend where every far right candidate will create this level of deniability of the legitimacy of their loss, but also it doesn't have just the effect of you becoming unsure or questioning or creating doubt around the election. It also has this effect of that you didn't actually lose ever, so you're not treated like a loser. And because you're not treated like a loser and you are not acting like a loser, then you don't get the same kind of like normal political like push of like, you lost, your party's going to suffer because you lost. You just were like, I never lost and everyone was against me. And then you just keep pushing.
And it also, on a macro level, it degrades democracy, right? Democracy is a problem because this election did not go down as it was supposed to go down. The people were cheated, but they don't focus so much on the people being cheated. They focus on the fact that like this is an instrument that can be manipulated, and like it is manipulated by our enemies, and that's why like your voice hasn't been registered. So it would actually just be better if we cancel that, right? And we get to remain in power, and the people's voice is registered. Right, not through democracy, but through strong leadership, strong, accountable leadership that is responsive to the people. And I think that in many instances, like the people do eat this up. They, the cynicism of which flows from our own uncertainty, they use it to weaken the people of any nation, whether it's America, whether it's Hungary, whether it's Serbia, whether it's Sweden. And this is, I think, as James Madison noted, this is the danger to democracy. The apathy of the people is the danger of democracy, because in so many instances, they're the ones that allow for the bestiality of these authoritarians to dominate them. It's fucked up, Hunter.
It is fucked
up. It's fucked up.
No, I haven't thought about this, but this one's better. I often think about how, things like complaining about migration or trans rights or these issues are not just like distractions from thinking about politics in a way, because you just have to be on defensive and you have to live in this kind of like fantasy world being presented around you, like great replacement theory. Oh, there's a great trans conspiracy trying to trans everyone. Like, and we have to engage with this fantasy. And so we never talk about actual political things, not using like, these things don't matter. It's just like the version of the thing we have to engage with literally is made up. Like it's and there's only like so many hours in the day.
And we have to stop, as Caitlin always notes, and I am a student of this line of, we have to push back against this. They're always trying to push these unrealistic ideas that we then have to like argue based off of. And it is better.
And keep us debunking endless fantasy nonsense.
Debunking things that don't exist, right? And that is impossible to do. And yet we do it because we, in many instances, believe in good faith discussion, right? And so you say, well, no, that's right. But you're not getting anywhere that way. You have to push back, and you have to say, as I've done recently, right? When somebody says, like, why did the Democrats allow millions of people to flood across the border for all the years, right? Why did that happen? You have to be like, I'm not answering that question. And when they get weird about you, you have to tell them, I'm not answering this question because this question isn't real. This is an unreal question. You're asking me why the sky is green, and I'm not going to tell you why it is, because it's not. Okay. I'm not going to play your game because your game is insane. And we all need to be on the same place, the same plane. We can't be playing Chutes and Ladders and Mousetrap. We both have to be playing the same game. We have to be playing checkers and not chess, or chess and not checkers. But it's incongruent to simply go along with these ideas. We have to push back. That's what democracy is going to end up relying on, is a strong pushback from people like us, like allies of ours, right? Who say, no, this is inappropriate, and you need to look at some data, man,
Right.
because the
Grow
data is going
up.
to illustrate that like what you're believing in is untrue to varying degrees.
Yeah, and I think also in a very material way, these things weaken us on both, you know, when especially when I'm thinking about like with the Ukraine and war and stuff, it's just like when we're being told repeatedly, like we should shrink our countries, we should put up all these borders. It's like the way countries are rich is by people moving to them, and then they create spending, and that is how an economy works. It's like, this is just how it works. Like I didn't make this up. And it's like, and also just like, if you're thinking about this dangerous world that we currently live in, and especially like me here in Europe, it's like, we have to be thinking about like remilitarizing and all these other things. It's like the insanity of like, oh, we should tell like young working people not to move to these countries. It's like, no, these are the people we literally need to be asking to move even more. And not only that, it's like, if they're still moving here while the continent is under threat, what bigger like legitimacy is there? It's like they could easily not go to the place that could potentially have World War III happen in a few years. It's like a real deal thing.
Right. And it's like, I'm not going to play the fantasy game where immigration somehow weakens a country. That literally never happens. That's just not how it works. No. Right. And that and with safety, the more interconnected the different elements of a community are, the safer it is. So if you tell me I have to keep shutting people out because they're different, you're telling me that I have to forfeit the safety of living in a community where people are looking out for each other. And I'm not doing that.
Right. With trans rights, for example, like this is the thing that's like tearing apart the fucking UK. And it's like such an insanity. It's an insanity how much it's talked about for many levels. But like the reality is, it's like trans liberation is good. It's actually good when we like start, removing things from being like gendered in our society, because like for the most part, that helps to maintain patriarchy and do a lot of worse things for all women around the world, and has for a very long time. When we are instead having a conversation of like, where should we be gender segregating in society? And we have to do this. Like we must, it has to occur. Like you're moved so far away from like actually achieving any kind of justice or liberation for anybody.
Where we're like, where can that person pee? We're like, wow, you're off mark. Like you were talking about what doesn't matter.
Yeah. And you see this because it metastasizes very quickly, and they're very clever about these topics. Like they understand that like it's just a hop, skip, and a jump from one issue to another issue, especially for the right. Like once you're able to start demonizing people, once you're able to start like making people question other people's humanity and how they should exist within their society and their neighbors, and to make people fearful and paranoid all the time, then they've done like most of the work for that. Like they don't have to win elections at that point, because everyone just starts doing the thing that they're doing. And this is one of the big successes of this generation of fascists on the far right? They've managed to convince lots of social democrats, lots of liberals, even Greens, to do real fucking right-wing policies, like crazy reactionary shit all over the world. And this is very, very, very bad, because it means that even when they lose, they still win, because they're still getting some form of their policy. And they're never going to be happy, because it's not in their political interest to present that they are actually happy. They'll be alone in their Discord chat together being like, we're the greatest, we're winning. But then in front of the cameras, they'll be like, oh, you guys are still too woke. You only built like 17 concentration camps instead of the 87 I wanted.
You must hate Western civilization.
Oh, I see you only shot 12 migrants today. You must hate Jesus. It's like, that's the level of like insanity it gets to, right? I mean, in the UK, you get to the point, because they have, so one of the evil things the BBC does is they have a guy who's out at the cliffs of Dover who counts the migration boats coming in. And they report this every fucking day. Every day they have a guy who's just watching small boats come in, and objectively this number is not very
12
large.
Today. Like, what do you mean?
yes it's literally that. And it's a live, they have a live account on Twitter that counts the migration boats. So of course people think about this because they're being presented it to them every fucking day, and thus and
this
also
is
because
news.
Yeah. And then because people have no conception of like numbers in a country of, over all, what the UK's at like 66 million or something now. It's like, we're talking about a couple 10,000s of people coming in on these boats. And that's like when it's peaking and it's really crazy. That's not that many people. It's a tiny amount of the total migration to the country. And also it's like nothing compared to something that's happening like the Canary Islands, for example, that actually gets hit by very large amounts of migrant boats coming in. Like we're talking like more than the UK gets in a year. In 1 month.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a tiny place.
This is the discursive and ideological role of newsworthiness and like what goes on your news outlet, right? That is doing so much work. Like just the simple fact of having Jeffrey on his folding lawn chair with his binoculars counting, and then the BBC is like, yes, this is news. The people must know. Like that does so much work.
But for me, having been in local media to some degree for years, you have an obligation to educate your viewers or your listeners that like economists have long conceived that migration by adults is a net win for the country that they are going to, because it takes a lot of resources to grow the human plant. Right. And many of those resources, and time, right. And that's years of time, right. Until they become an adult and can function. And of course, there's university, there's college, right. So there's a lot of steps to create a person who can work and be a part of society positively. Right. And it is a boon for nations when you just got adults like showing up at the shore, like ready to like be a part of your society. Like it is positioned as the exact opposite, as though, to paraphrase one of Steve Bannon's favorite books, right? They're just like invading the shoreline, but it's actually the exact opposite. It's actually like the quote on the Statue of Liberty, right? Like all of these people are here and like they're just trying to like make the best that they can, and
they want to do America. Like they want to be in this country doing the things we want. And Europe,
they want to do Hungary. They want to do America. They want to do UK. They're not here to like change. They're here to like participate. And what's so great is that you have people participate for long enough, and they contribute to your society in rich and beautiful ways, and you contribute to theirs, right? And now there's this new hybridization occurring. But we can be proud of our people. We can be proud of the conglomeration of people that come to our shores. We can be glad and proud of what we get from that. And that is certainly more wholesome and superior than all of this whining and mealy-mouthism regarding the negatives that people are going to bring to us. It's just
I
foolish.
saw boats on the water.
Oh, poor thing. I mean,
this does wrap around to one of Viktor Orban's big obsessions, which was like birth rates, and one of the obsessions of like the far right. So like Hungary was one of the countries that like went way overboard in like trying to create programs around basically like making people have more babies. So if you have 3 kids or more, you pay no income tax in Hungary.
I know Poland.
I know. My wife said the same thing. She was like, "We could do that. We could make that happen." But
I only need one more, I guess.
but it catastrophically failed because like just fundamentally in advanced societies, people don't want to just like have more babies endlessly. It's just not a thing.
Yeah, a tax cut is not the reason people are having babies.
Yeah. And the other thing, like I think about this, I think it was a BBC report, but I can't remember. But they were talking with some counselors from like rural Scotland, so like tiny villages in the middle of fucking nowhere, and they are all villages that are basically like dying out because everyone's like super old in the villages, and everyone moved into the cities or moved down south to London or something. And these were SNP counselors for the Scottish National Party, and they were complaining about how one of the big programs they had tried to do was to settle people from the EU into these villages and to like so that the village would still exist. And this was like obviously like quite easy because they could use like the free movement and like make this a more constructed thing. And in their minds, they were just like, oh, it's great. These people want to move here and they want to be like really Scottish and they want to move to like the most Scottish places on earth, the middle of the Highlands. But it was also just like so sad. Like it was heartwarming to hear that. It was just like, oh, I had this Italian couple move here and blah, blah, blah. The village only has, 20 people. All of them are over 60. And I was just like, that's so bizarre, but also very wholesome.
Yeah.
And then she'd be like, but now they're thinking they have to move back because their immigration is not like solid and they're not sure about XYZ thing. And now these villages are just going to, like, these people are going to die and they're going to be empty. They're just going to be ghost towns. And she's like, what is this? Like, what are we doing here? Like, I would rather this town stays with human people living in it than just stops existing. Yeah. And if they want to like get down with all the Scottish things, that's great. Like, it's cool. And I think this is like the thing that like people struggle to understand because they're told all the time that their culture is being destroyed or someone's trying to steal it or whatever. But coming from New Orleans, a place with very intense culture, like people buy in. They buy into the culture. Right. Some people will try to
why they came.
But usually they fail. Right. So like they came there, they wanted to do it. Like no one has a gun to their head to be in like rural Scotland or anywhere else or in Hungary. It's like they want to be there. If they're putting in the effort to learn the language and do all this stuff, like you as the government should be making language courses easier and putting more money into cultural spending so that they can go see like Hungarian bands and music and blah, blah, blah. And like put some effort into like translating stuff, like make it a little bit easier to buy in. That makes the culture stronger. Make more culture, you have more culture. Right. Like the idea that like if we just get rid of the immigrants, we'll have a golden age of culture is like so bonkers, like weird neoliberalism. It's like the free market of culture will take into hand once we get rid of all the brown people. It's like, what is this? What is this logic? It doesn't make any sense.
My frog will grow very strong in a jar without any air holes. Absolutely. That's just
in
how
what
it works.
world?
That's just how it
works.
works.
But that's literally how they talk about things like, Muslim immigration, where they're like, or like the third world, right? They're like, oh, if we import the third world, we'll become the third world is one of their favorite phrases. Some like Curtis Yarvinism or whatever. It sucks ass. And they're like, they are imagining a universe in which people come here from, say, Somalia, and they're like, here I am in America. I wish to make it nothing like America anymore. I want it to be exactly like the place that I left. And it's like, no, they literally just want to continue to like be the color that they are, still speak the language that they grew up with, maybe wear some of the clothes that they owned before they moved here, like, like eat some of the food they already like that's not the same thing as like coming into a town like, Springfield and like demolishing it and turning it into like something totally alien. They are moving to America to be in America. You can trust that.
Yes. Yeah. And you can grow too. You can grow as well. You can become enriched by the diversity coming into America. You don't have to hide yourself away. You can. I mean,
woke mind virus.
Don't make me learn things. Yeah. You have it.
It brings warmth to my heart to imagine like an Italian couple like speaking like a Highlander. Right? Like that is both heartwarming and also funny as shit because like English people can understand those Highlanders. So if we got like
just putting on their wool jumpers and their tartan and just having
talking about cruise and oh shit going to Edinburgh, like like that's amazing, and that is the type of thing that
get
keeps
your wellies
societies alive. You need that. You need that. It needs to be growing, and it cannot grow in a vacuum. It can only grow with other positive things. And, well, RoteRote, we're going to get rid of, okay? We're going to get rid of Viktor Orban, okay? The election, as of this recording, as you noted, is only 3 days away. Well, welcome back. Happy days are actually here again. And no false alarm this time.
It's the happy ones.
It's that actual it's a hapisode. We did
That's
our Eurosode.
Fire.
That fire, right? It was bad fire. No, it's good.
Those are celebratory fires.
still half the answer, where you know that understanding a question is half the answer, and this remains Trent R. Nelson, Caitlin M. Green, and also Hunter. All you know him as RoteRote. We sometimes know him as that. We sometimes know him as RoteRote. But in any event, well. We were just talking, it seems like just seconds ago, our listeners and our viewers were hearing us, watching us lament about what might happen during the Hungarian election, which was a couple days in the future when we first recorded the episode, but now lies a few days in the past. We did pre-coverage. This is post-coverage, and the post-coverage looking pretty good because, while Hunter said that we might get by the skin of our teeth, well, it appears that was an underprediction. They got smoked, as my co-host said, like wonderful brisket. Hunter, how have you been? How has it been reveling in democracy? Tell us here in America, please. We're dying to know how that feels again.
Honestly, like the second the polls closed, like we started people started texting me like in the evening, because we were all, if you've worked anywhere in and around like the European Union, you have had something you've worked on screwed with by Viktor Orban or his party personally. So like the level of like personal feeling towards this is like intense with my friends, like my EU friends. So but then like once we started seeing like the first kind of like rumbles, and then started seeing the counting, and then it going way in Peter Magyar's direction, and then continuing to gain throughout the night, everyone just started being like celebratory. Bottles were popped. Like my wife and I cheered, and it was wonderful. And then also people started shit posting, and it was very funny, very quality.
Excellent news.
But man, it is just, it's still unbelievable. I'll be totally honest. I woke up the next day.
Yeah, our bubbly is still in the fridge. It's still waiting, but we'll get there. We'll get to that day. But I think it's time to propose a toast, wouldn't you say?
I would say. All right. Cheers to the fall of
Cheers,
Viktor Orban and Hungarian democracy.
For some of us, it's 8 a.m, so some of us have sparkling water. Those of you in Europe can enjoy your actual, whatever.
You know what? It is 5 o'clock somewhere, and that somewhere is where Hunter is. So cheers to that. But yes, we do have things to do. I have to drive later. So there you are. Incredible. And let's talk about this for a second. In just 10 minutes ago, you said that that you thought that this would be a victory, but that it might be a little closer than what it ended up being. How did we get to this position? How did we get to absolute blowout? I mean, you look at the map, and the map itself is a stunning rebuke of a party that, as we noted in the pre-election discussion, has held power for over a decade. Almost 2 decades at that. How did this all fall into place, building on what we spoke about before the election?
So it's been 19 years. When Viktor Orban got into power, I was 19 years old and just out of high school. Now I'm 35 and looking at the grim future. But it is also like to understand, it's not the Hungarian or the Hungarian opposition as a whole's first rodeo, right? They've had several elections to figure out the puzzle that is Viktor Orban, and also like build up their external sources. But like let's talk like nitty gritty about like how Peter Magyar won the election. As I said before, the other parties not contesting the election is a huge part of that. So that's like bedrock thing. That's unfortunately not really applicable to the American situation, but in many other countries with multi-party systems, that is very applicable. Right. So standing down and knowing to stand down, and then thus pooling all supporters' vote, energy, time, money, everything together. Even if you're not directly like working together, because obviously like it's a more conservative party, so there's going to be people who are not down with that. You're still all pushing in the exact same direction, and you're all getting the same candidate at the end of the day. And it was, I heard one of the officials from the Hungarian Socialist Party talk about this, and they were talking about how because the commentator's like, isn't it weird that you're like a main party and you didn't run in the election, and also like this guy's a conservative and you're like popping bottles right now, like that seems odd. And I think it was someone from the BBC, if I remember correctly, and he goes, look, I think in the future elections we'll have a really strong ask, we'll be able to sell social democracy, blah blah blah, but right now this moment was about getting rid of Viktor Orban. One thing, we got rid of him. Not only did we get rid of him, we got rid of him in a spectacular way. So the second part of this is why he's got this super majority. He's got almost 70% of all the seats in the entire parliament. The way Viktor Orban went around trying to rig the election in his favor was designed around basically that. So some seats are on a list and some seats are not on the list, meaning like a party list. Some are proportional and some are not proportional. This is like part of the deal. But the huge benefit he kind of kicked into the system is if you get around 45%, you would effectively just get a 2/3 majority in seats. That was just like how the system worked. So when Orban's party is not able to clear 240%, and then TISA, the party of Peter Magyar, is able to get around 52, 53%, you're really able to do magical things.
So basically what you're saying is that like some of the rigging that Orban did worked against him in terms of his parliament representation?
Yeah, and thus all those situations where like a non-high amount of votes gets a bunch of extra seats effectively worked against him. Some people, you're going to love this. Some people have been calling this dummy mandering because it's gerrymandering. But stupid.
Well, that term has actually been in America as well recently because they were discussing, I believe it was either with Virginia or the Texas. It was Texas gerrymandering. I'm sorry, and the race to try to exclude an extra Dem seat has created districts that actually now have a better chance of going Democrat because of the turn that a lot of Trump's people have taken, along with the Democrats that are there. So if the Texas legislature had created another safe Democrat district, they probably wouldn't be at risk of losing 3 to 4 Texas districts that they now are potentially in danger of losing. So yes, dummy mandering. And again, Elbridge Gerry.
I need to add that to my word of the year list for 2026.
Yes, absolutely. Elbridge Gerry would be, he'd be perplexed by this, right? We're supposed to be doing this to win. But
this is a strategic thing.
Why are we losing as we do this? But this is why. What do they say in baseball? The ultimate cheater sport. This is why cheating doesn't pay, because eventually it come back to bite you. And look how it has come back to bite Viktor Orban. He was so flummoxed at his concession speech. He looked like to paraphrase my co-host, he looked like a sad small bean, right? Very
he's a little guy.
When I saw him and all his high officials behind him, I was just like, that looks like a lot of people that are going to be in a courtrum for a lot of the next rest of this year. Like just like this, like I saw a ghost drained of color. Like, oh fuck.
So screwed. Oh my god.
So number 3, third big thing, the foreign vote. So the people who were Hungarians who left Hungary voted in huge numbers all around the world, going to the voter stations that were set up by the Hungarian embassies. This is a huge amount of voters. This is also a huge amount of voters in the United States too, like millions of people in critical areas around the country. And don't think it's just like a bunch of people from New York or California. It's very like evenly distributed. But like the whipping campaign to get people to go to vote, and then also this kind of like whole of society campaign to kind of like boost TISA and Peter Magyar, and also just like to demean and destroy Viktor Orban was very, very, very effective. If you go on social media and you kind of like search any of the Hungarian like tags and stuff, you'll just see like video after video after video, and like some of them are fun, some of them are cringe, but like cool, and people have just like they're in it. They're in on this like whole of society effect to get rid of this guy. And I think that is something that's directly applicable to the US context. And it's something that we should really think about. I was even thinking last night, because so I was thinking about the California governor election and how there's a bunch of Democrats running and they're effectively like splitting the vote so heavily that a Republican can probably like scoop their way in. And I was thinking this also just like in the terms of like what happened with Peter Magyar and like, okay, there is this kind of laser focus on getting Orban out. Like that is the main deal. Like get Orban out, dismantle his regime. These are the goals. Like this is the priority. This is the main thing. If this government does nothing else, it would still be successful. And then I was also thinking, there was some discussion around the makeup of who these supporters, these voters were. And you would think because like it's a right-wing party in the right-wing group of parties in Europe, the EPP, the European People's Party, that it would just be a bunch of conservatives, right? But they're actually like the heavy minority in that party. They're only around like 20% of his total supporters. All the rest are like green socialists and liberals, right? So he actually has like a constituency that is just like total of society, and if anything, quite a progressive one, ironically, with the party they're in. Basically, it's a huge disconnect. But this can also be thought of in like what's happening with Democratic primaries in like 2028. Like maybe the smart thing is like people who just don't have a shot, they drop out early. Like we don't do not like a coronation thing. Like we should still have like the primaries get contested, blah, blah, blah. But like understand, like you have to like make a pledge that you will support whoever is the nominee, but not in a small way. Like make sure your campaign is effectively kept together and keep pushing for the greater goal. And I think this is the idea that I think we need to figure out how we can convert from this Hungarian success. I also think there's also this aspect of there's two parts to this. There was the campaign of Peter Magyar and Tiza itself, and then there's also this civil society campaign that's happening completely independently, independent rebellion, independent action that's taking place that is not remotely attached to it and sometimes in opposition to it. But at the end of the day, they're both focused on tearing down the Orban regime. So it's understanding that a diversity of actors, but also a diversity of tactics works in a profound way. And when you have like a critical mass of people going out, as we've seen with like these massive No Kings protests and also all the stuff in Minneapolis and, all these cities and all these things, you just have to keep growing that and getting it bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what the Hungarians did. It took them 16 years to get to that point. I think we can do it faster if we understand what to do. In realistic terms, like they were trying to make up how do you do this in an electoral autocracy? How do you build up these systems? Okay, we have a model now. And just like fascists learn from other fascists, we can learn from the Hungarian, democracy about how to reclaim that democracy. And I think also in the days ahead, and I just made a TikTok video about this a few hours ago. We will also see like what they have to do to keep Viktor Orban from not coming back into power. Some listeners might not be aware, but Jair Bolsonaro is in jail in Brazil, but his son right now is running to become the president of Brazil. And it looks like he could possibly win and thus then pardon his father and all the other people surrounding the coup attempt there. Yeah. So it's like, we have to understand that it's not just about regular politics and peaceful transitions of power. It's also understanding that it's at the same time political warfare, and that sometimes your opponent, if they get into power, if they were able to retain power, you might not get another election to do it, or the next one will be so significantly warped that it becomes infinitely more difficult to do.
Right.
Yeah.
We
and
can't
close
be
elections, right?
We can't be appraising our victories in battles as victories in the war. Right. The war drags on even after we depose the tyrant, because then, as you noted, Hunter, our work has to go into ensuring that the tyrant doesn't return. That the son of tyrant does not make a comeback. That, that we don't have some loony who tries to overthrow the government, and then, the government doesn't do anything to stop him from like getting reelected 4 years later, right? That is our task. And certainly we learned from the Hungarians that together we are stronger than separated, no?
Exactly. And I think, it's like one other aspect of that before I go into this other thought I have, but you shouldn't ever think that just winning at the ballot box has solved the problem. Nothing was Thanos snapped away yesterday. The political networks that Orban has built, the economic network that Orban has built, the influence networks that Orban has built are not gone. Even the funding coming from the state is not gone until it's taken away. And this is important to keep in mind. And this is what I expressed in my video. Like, they need to move very fast, or else their opponents will be able to quickly regroup. They have a huge international right-wing movement that needs Viktor Orban to succeed. And it's not just because Viktor Orban funded the far right or hosted a lot of events for the far right or was a big networker for the far right. It's also that Hungary was a model and example of the far right, of success for them. And it doesn't have to be actually successful or materially successful in the real world, but in the fantasy of the far right, it has to exist. Orban has to be there. There has to be this success model. And this is so vital, because whether it's major news channels in Europe like Euronews being owned by Orban allies, or he, for example, owns a football team in the Balkans, like, he has so much stuff all over and spread around that it will take a very long time and a huge amount of aggressive action from the state to really be able to do this. And fundamentally, Peter Magyar is right now walking into the same position that a Democratic president will be in 2029. He has a constitutional court that's all Fidesz members. He actually probably has a slightly harder task, unfortunately. He also has a situation where the effective equivalent to, like, the honorary president of Hungary, who, like, has to sign the legislation for them to be legitimate, is a member of Fidesz. So, like, he has so much of the apparatus of the state and the government is just like Orban people for, like, ranks deep. That's not to, like, present everyone in the government as like a big Orban guy. Some people just have jobs, but the leadership is all Orban people, and they've not only been Orban people, they've been there for, like, the last 16 years. And so, like, all of these systems, and you have to remember, this is a very young democracy in, like, the broad scheme of things. We're talking about year 36 right now of Hungarian democracy, period. Like, since the Second Republic started. Half of that time almost was just Viktor running it as a little dictatorship and turning everything into, like, a easily lootable box for him and his family. And, you know, he's got sons who are already active in politics. Like, we have not seen the last dance of Viktor Orban until him and a lot of other people are in jail. And that's just the reality of it. One of the happy things, one of the positive things is, like, even in his acceptance speech, Peter Magyar started talking about joining the European Public Prosecutor's Office. This is an anti-corruption agency set up by the European Union, basically because the member states are individually a bit too corrupt and biased, obviously, in not solving their own corruption. And so this is, like, a big deal. He called upon basically, like, most justices to resign, or else they're going to, you know, forcibly resign them through impeachment or whatever. And this is a big deal, because I think as long as he stays on as that is top of mind, I think people will let his economic policy slide. They will let his social policy slide. They'll let a lot of his policy slide as long as he can get back on the good side of the EU, unfreeze like literally billions in European Union funds, and as long as he goes after Fidesz, like, that is the thing what people want. They want justice. They want a truth to come out for all of the lies of the last 16 years, and they want to make sure that the system is working in a way that you can't just get away with things. You know, a lot of the post-communist period of Hungary was a lot of people just kind of, like, forgetting and people not really answering for their crimes of what they did under this authoritarian regime. And that always sat bad in people's mouths. A lot of the people who are oligarchs of the Second Hungarian Republic, unfortunately, were officials and minor apparatchiks in the last regime. You will see that in a lot of, like, Central and Eastern European countries. You know?
This happened a lot.
Yeah. A lot of people who were, like, in their 20s and 30s in the old regime, like, knew enough of how everything worked to really take advantage of the new system. And this is a big problem. This is also just, you know, they're the realistic teething of, like, early republics, and it's no different in either the American one or any of the others. So it's hopeful. Like, I hope so deeply for the Hungarian people, the courage they showed in doing this. I think back to last year, there was this months-long drama about Budapest Pride. So Budapest is, like, a very, like, lefty city. It's super chill. It's very cool. Like, big ups to Budapest. They were like, okay, we're doing a big Pride event. They knew that Orban would try to pass a law, like a national law to ban pride in the country. And then not only that, criminalize it so that if you attended the illegal event, you'd have to pay hundreds and hundreds of euros in fines. So this happened. The mayor had like a standoff with Orban for like weeks about this. And even though the event was illegal, and even though every single person was going to get fined, and they have like very intense facial recognition stuff that they bought from their friend's Chairman Xi Jinping, they went out there in hundreds of thousands of people. Hundreds of thousands of Hungarians. I want to say it was 600,000, but it might have been more than that. They got together in not a giant country. We're talking about a country of, less than 10 million people. And it was like 1 in 10 people went there and they were like, no, I'm coming out here. People who would never have gone there otherwise. Because they knew the bigger picture. Like, Orban goes after gay people because he uses it to keep people not thinking about all the corruption. And people are able to make that leap. Like, we should never underestimate people, even though, yes, there's lots of ignorance, there's lots of misunderstanding about how politics or government works, but people are not stupid. People can be educated, they can be given the light of rationality back to them, and they can be made to put together things of why they're being screwed over and who's screwing them over.
Right. Yeah, and it was a really powerful message. Like, all those pictures came over to us here in the U.S., and I think it shows that this is a group of people who's not going to allow themselves to be stopped, even if it doesn't look like, it doesn't look like their way is totally free of barriers. They seem pretty determined.
I can tell you actually like a tiny story that I don't know if it got out of like the little European bubble sphere of like EU worker people, but so there was actually like a counter demonstration. So you've seen like the famous photo of like the bridge, right? And there's like just endless people. So there was like a counter demo of like a far right nationalist group that like was at the end of the bridge, and they thought their big gamble was the police will be on our side if we start some shit because this is technically an illegal demo. Keep in mind the mayor is at the demo. And we're not talking about a lot of dudes, like maybe like around 20, maybe less than 20 guys. And they get out there and they're like, yeah, we're standing in the way. We're going to stop the gays. And then they looked around and they noticed that like the police were not protecting them and they weren't doing anything. And then they had actually walked off and left them alone. Like, they just exited. And then they were like, oh my God, there's a lot of people. Oh geez. No. And then they had to run away. Then they just had to run away.
Oh my gosh. That is so funny. We get that in, I don't know if other cities have this, but in Portland, we have this problem where there's like a bunch of dickheads who will show up to like a No Kings protest or something. And the one before the most recent one, they jumped in front of the march, so like right in front of the people holding like the first banner, and they were like streaming and they were like, look, we've taken over the march. And it's like, buddy, nobody noticed you just look like a dude with a camera. Like, but they were like, we owned those libs, like we got in front of the march. And it's like, nobody's even looking at you. I don't know.
They try to do that in Springfield too.
They walked around for a minute with their cameras and they're like, I'm going to Pioneer Courthouse Square. That's where my friends are. And so they wandered over there and tried to start fights on the bricks, which is not smart. That's a brick courtyard. Don't start fights there. You're going to get hurt, my friend.
Whenever I see these like Patriot Front bozos and they're wearing the morph suits, I'm just like, man, I'm not going to get got by a guy in a morph suit. Like, come on.
Honestly, that's just embarrassing. Also, my guy, you are in your morph suit with your neck gaiter up to your eyeballs, streaming from your cell phone under your like Rumble handle or whatever the fuck. Like, come on, my guy. Well, the anonymity is not exactly like gonna save you here.
Well, they're not thinking this thing out. They're never thinking this thing out, right? They're always doing it from their IP address, from their house, they leave their receipt with their credit card information. I mean, it's just not well thought out hooliganism.
Right.
It's
they
can't
be
even
famous,
do that,
but
right?
Not accountable, and it's not going to happen. You can't have
both ways. No, you can't. So, well, while we were so thrilled about all of this, and the Hungarian people were so thrilled about this. Well, I think that the New York Times might have been watching a different election. Is that true? Is that what we think, Caitlin?
You know, the thing about the New York Times editorial board is that they've got the biggest brains, okay, and they're so heterodox, right? They're thinking about stuff from angles that you and I, with our little brains, could never have come up with.
Never.
Right? They are taking the take less tooken, and it is like, what are you doing, my guy? Because this is a general like rule of thumb that we have here at Half the Answer at Liberal Currents, which is sometimes if you think you have found a take that nobody else has thought of, you should consider that they didn't say it because it's stupid.
Oh.
Maybe the reason no one else is saying it is because they did actually think of it and they were like, that's a dumb idea. I'm not going to publish that. The New York Times editorial board is not capable of thinking of that. And so they have come out with a piece called A Roadmap for Defeating Trumpism. Okay. Which, like, that as a title, we're like, yeah, okay. Like Magyar's success maybe does tell us some stuff about what could happen for us, right, as a country. Like, Hunter, you explained one of the things, which is like the opposition parties uniting against him and falling behind this person who they believe could take him out, right? That is something for us to learn from. Having faith in the people to make the right choice, giving them the information that they need to come out in force and demonstrate that they are not interested in continuing to exist under this regime. That's all cool and awesome. That's not exactly
I just remembered one thing.
Yes.
And this might mold our next little part very well.
Let's go.
So the other big take that I haven't seen people cooking very well with outside of Hungary was that media trust is incredibly low in Hungary for any remotely mainstream media. So people only look at like independent investigatory people or like a few of the independent websites and stuff. And when I'm saying like really low, I mean like in the 22s to the 30% for like all the top tier like fancy papers and stuff. So the trust collapse in any of the outlets, which in our American scenario would be the New York Times, towards believing any of the things they're putting out there, I think infinitely helped, because if your avenues for getting out propaganda at the highest level of like legitimacy, just one in five people agree, like believe it's even real, like you can't really get your messaging through anymore, right? Like
you're losing.
Yeah, right. You like, because they're not going to believe it even if they read it, and then like they're probably also just not reading it at that point. So like it's two levels of it. This is like critical, and I think this is something that groups like Liberal Currents and others can help accelerate, because like we've seen the kind of failure of the mainstream media for most of this century in American politics.
Yeah. And, you know, the New York Times and the other like large outlets are going to tell you that like the solution isn't to listen to Liberal Currents or to subscribe to the Handbasket or to follow Amanda Moore or whatever. You know, the solution is actually to remember that we're actually the smart ones, and you should listen to us, the New York Times, because we will tell you what's true. And that's going great for them. I think they certainly didn't get dog walked on social media at all over this op-ed. It didn't happen. Right. Okay. So they start out kind of in the clear. It's just a description of the facts, right? Peter Magyar had a landslide victory. He faced long odds because Viktor Orban had taken control or hounded out a lot of the normal mechanisms, institutions that would help us here, repress political opponents, tilted the political system in his favor. Great. Yet Mr. Magyar nonetheless crushed Mr. Orban in voting on Sunday. Awesome. Hungary is obviously a very different country from the United States. That's a sentence that could have been the end of this. And yet they continued to keep going. They decided, let's put more words. Let's put more words on the page. Why don't we? But Mr. Orban's rise and his use of power were long models for Mr. Trump. True. Now, Mr. Orban's demise can be a model for the Democratic Party and any other party that is trying to defeat an authoritarian right-wing threat. Okay. Two aspects of Mr. Magyar's campaign strategy were especially important. First, he focused on the bread and butter issues that often guide the decisions of swing voters, and not just in Hungary.
Can't be talking about no intricate issues of social rights or climate change or black people or transgender people, because those aren't bread and butter issues. Bread and butter issues are like, who is making my corn? Where is my food
Social
coming
issues
from?
are like bread and butter. Who is that?
Yeah,
Who is that?
because as we all know, LGBTQ people and women don't eat, and so we don't have to worry about.
They have never
eaten bread
Yeah,
or
I
butter.
don't know about bread nor butter, no dairy. I'm gluten free actually, and so I don't know. And
No way, me too.
oh, I am not, but people in my
twinsies.
family are, so I've had to learn how to bake gluten free.
I get hot. I have a slight gluten allergy. I'm not a celiac, but eating bread before night, that'll get me sweating. So, unfortunately,
I'm really sorry about that. I love bread so much.
me too.
It started during COVID, during the lockdowns, and it's been a roller coaster since then. I'm on that low FODMAP diet, which means I have like multiple pages of stuff I can't eat.
That's nightmarish.
But we need to get back to regular.
Let's go back. Okay, so
not my bad.
The thing
not my
about
tummy issues.
the thing about bread and butter issues is that you can't take bread and butter to a pride march, and as we all know, the pride march had nothing to do with solidifying the opposition against Orban. Because of the stuff.
Baby, I feel like if you were out there at the Pride March with the bread and butter and giving it out, you'd be the most popular person there.
Can I tell you something? Okay, so
people love free bread and butter.
We in Portland have the Macadam ice facility, right? It's an ice processing facility. There is a kind of like constant presence of protesters there. Whenever I go there, there is a nice old lady handing out snacks, and it is the best.
Snack mom.
Sometimes she makes them herself. Sometimes she's like, I just ran to KFC. I have a chicken bucket. Do you want a piece of chicken?
Oh, goodness gracious. Thank you, Ice.
So
Thank
good.
you,
Anyway.
Ice Mom. Hey, for any of our listeners,
that's the bread and butter issues that I care about.
For any of our listeners and viewers, you can go back to the Portland chicken episode and you can hear some of the Portland Ice moms talking about not only food, but also about crocheting and other assorted crafts. These are the bread and butter issues that the New York Times wants us to forget exist. All of these people actually have a big part to play in our success. And so doing like the third way, or the New York Times talks about trying to diminish those topics in lieu of what we might just call white heterosexual topics, is not smart. Not smart. Shouldn't do it. Should ignore that. Caitlin, what else did they say?
Well, I'll tell you what. So they're going to describe, I love it when I get to see like 10 years of American history in one sentence. I think that's really cool. So in the United States, these voters soured on Mr. Trump after his first term and helped elect Joe Biden in 2020, only to become frustrated with inflation and vote in 2024 to return Mr. Trump to office. So 2024, that election, you might have thought it was about a lot of things, but it was actually about inflation. It was only about inflation, just inflation.
Eggs.
That's so
all
cool.
there is inflation.
Yeah. What's going on there? Anyway, the campaign platform of the party Mr. Magyar leads, Tisha, was titled Foundations of a Functional and Humane Hungary. It criticized the inefficiency of government services. Its agenda included tax cuts for working class families, expanded healthcare, increased pensions, larger child benefits, and a pay increase for support staff members at schools. It said it would help pay for these programs through both a wealth tax on the very rich and the recovery of European Union transfer payments reduced because of Mr. Orban's anti-democratic policies. Mr. Magyar's party spread its campaign themes in innovative ways through social media, making Mr. Orban's state-run media messaging look old and tired. So that's how he won, right?
I kind of love that list of policy proposals, if that was actually the position of a Democratic candidate, people would be like, that's communism.
Yeah, first of all,
Like, that's
sounds like
how
fucking Bernie
warped
Sanders.
the American spectrum is.
Yes.
This is the conservative guy.
Yes.
Because what are a bunch of Democratic politicians doing right now, right today? They are floating the idea of, what is it? Tax cuts for the middle class, right? Not getting a bunch of money and spending it on you guys, not wealth tax. And not cutting taxes on poor people or the working class, right? No. They're like, what if we got rid of a bunch of taxes that the middle class are paying? Wouldn't that be so fun? Like, anyway,
when I saw
sometimes I'm
Cory
just
Booker
rendered
post that,
speechless.
I felt like my brain imploded in on itself, and I was like, I've seen every stupid idea now.
Yeah.
Like, we're here.
And it's not just, it was like Katie Porter too.
Yeah.
It was like a bunch of people that you're like, what are we doing?
A lot of them are still livid about SALT deductions from like 7 years ago. I mean, there is a desire not to do anything productive in the Democratic Party, which is, I think, why you hear people on this program, on other programs, doing their best to sort of cajole and prod and push the Democratic Party towards, I don't know, people who don't bring on Charlie Kirk to their podcast or things of that nature, because right now we still have the chance to get a candidate in 2028 who will actually fulfill our goals and ambitions, instead of just relying on these same old talking points. I mean, one thing that struck me about the rundown of Mr. Magyar's policies is that he spoke about the inefficiency of programs, of services, right? In America, we don't even think about services as services. Like, everyone is like so concerned that the U.S. Postal Service is like running a deficit. Its job is to deliver the mail. Okay, if you take how much money the U.S. Postal Service loses and then look at it as per how much they deliver, it costs like the average American, I think it's between $23 and like $36 a year to send all of the things that they'd like to send. That's a functionally good service. Okay, granted, it could work a little faster, right? We could put more money into it, but the point of services is not the point of businesses. And we in America are so caught up in this like profit, business, revenue mindset that we forget that like the job of the National Health Service is just to keep people alive. Like, that's its job.
No,
it's not.
Instead, we decide we're going to make the stuff really efficient by, running into the Department of Education and breaking a bunch of stuff and then sending a bunch of people home. And then it turns out that not only did we ruin a bunch of school districts by taking away a bunch of their staff and their resources, but we also didn't save any money.
Yeah, but
that's
again,
how we do efficiency.
It's just all of this language serves to suggest to the American population the idea that the American oligarchs already possess, which is, well, if it's so inefficient and we're supposed to run it like a business, well, wouldn't private enterprise run this more efficiently and more profitably? Which is, of course, bastardizing the entire fundamental concept that this is not designed to bring a return other than the service and what service returns, which is me getting candy from my mother in the mail or whatever the case may be. But why can we never have these things here? How come it can only be Mr. Magyar's proposal? How come it cannot be Mr. Booker's proposal?
No, I think that really hits the nail on the head for a lot of it, because something I've been thinking about, this is going to sound so nerdy, but so like I've been thinking about like the vibe session discourse a lot, and
sure, yeah.
To give it into like a nutshell, it's just like this. There's this kind of silly argument going on a few of the social media platforms that we're all lurkers on and posters, and this is this idea that like some people think things are getting worse, but like actually if you look at like economic markers for like the US and lots of other countries, like things are objectively getting better, and especially because like post COVID, like wages did go up quite a bit in most countries. So like that's like an argument, but regular people feel like things are still shit because like prices are still going up, and you know there's no other change other than that for them from their like a subjective perspective. And my argument on this kind of has like circled around the idea, at least in like the American context of this, because like this idea is very widespread also across the EU, in like different countries' vibe sessions. But in the American one, I think the biggest kind of like opportunity and thing that at least wraps around my head is that yes, American wages are going up, but costs are also going up. The inflation was quite a bit higher than most of the other countries. Like, for example, I live in one of the EU countries that had the lowest inflation in the whole EU, which was really good because they do this thing called wage indexing, which means like your wage at your private employer has to, by law, go up a certain amount over inflation. This is like the greatest thing ever. Like the first year I learned this was a thing, it blew my fucking mind as an American. I was like, what? I didn't have to do anything. And you just gave me so much more money. It fucked me up a bit, I'll be honest. But which, by the way, great policy.
Right.
But you know, so if you're in the US, like you have to think about like just like your income and your costs, and that's kind of like your idea of like how the market works. Whereas like in Europe, you have your income, your cost, but also the services that the state provides you. And this is very different. It means your costs are now split into like this trifecta. And that's just not a thing in the US for most people, unless you're like already on some sort of public benefit, or you're very old and you have Social Security, because that would be kind of like the closest equivocation. But because there's a lot of services in Europe and in European countries, a lot of your individual costs are sucked away, or they've been heavily regulated. For example, like even in the countries that have private health insurance, like Austria or Germany and most of the EU, basically, like it's so constricted that they can only charge you for X amount on certain things and X, Y, Z. So it's very contained, the cost, and the state has an ability to kind of contain costs in a way that just do not exist in the US. And so if you even had just like equivalent programs, like let's say that we're not getting like the UK's NHS system, which I think would be like the greatest thing to happen to the US ever, but like just let's just say we get like German regular like social insurance for healthcare. Like it's effectively just like the same insurance model, but like you just have buy it from like one or a few major insurance companies, and they are all heavily restricted on price. That would just give thousands and thousands of dollars back to most Americans. Like they would have so much more money in their pockets. And this, we're not even talking like touching anything on inflation. Like all that's still happening. All the costs of the store are still doing its own thing. But now you just have a bunch of extra money.
There was a 19-year-old Danish boy, okay, when I went to Denmark when I was 25, 26. There was a 19-year-old Danish boy who was a waiter at a restaurant, and he basically explained everything exactly as you just explained it. He's like, yeah, I went to a boarding school in Connecticut for like 3 years. They didn't know that we spoke Danish in Denmark. They were like, what do you speak, German? It was he was like making fun of Connecticut. Shout out to New York. They also make fun of Connecticut. But he essentially explained it as you just did, right? That like we don't have to worry about a whole bunch of costs that are like already wrapped into like what we pay in taxes and other functions like that.
And these are costs that could potentially ruin your life. Like
correct. And we just fold them in
medical bankruptcy. Right. Yeah.
So the pushback I got on this idea was based around the idea like, you know, these ideas and these like policy ideas have existed for a long time. Why didn't they show up in past moments of this kind of like vibe session feeling? And I think honestly, like Americans are much more clued into the fact of what they lack compared to other countries. Mm-hmm. And I think Donald Trump in a little way is a big part of this, and also Bernie Sanders, because even Trump, especially when he was talking around like the pharmaceutical stuff and like getting the same price that like France and the Europeans pay, it's like even one of his stump speech things, like that's teaching people that other countries have a thing that you don't have. Mm-hmm. And like that thought, that idea even remotely existing in your head, that like there is actually a way better system that I would not even have to pay for any of this shit, and I could just like save 10 grand a year, like that eats in the back of people's brains at some like very low level. So it's not just like the prices are going up, it's that there could be difference. You might not know what it is exactly, or you could explain it to people, but like something else does exist, and that you could have that and your life would be marginally better. And it's not just one thing, it's a lot of things in the US. Like if you're into trains, you'll start learning like, oh fuck, our transit system's like all horrible. And then like once you start thinking about it, you can't unsee these kind of things. And it's like lots of little things like that. It's like, oh man, like if I lived in Canada, I would not have to go bankrupt this year. Like it's like really simple things. And these aren't like utopian places either. And I think that becomes even like more kind of gutting on some level to like root, in this idea of like the vibe being bad.
People have this.
People have this. It's a real thing, like, and one of the things I say, and this is kind of mean, but it's just like, some people will kind of like, their American exceptionalism, like even if they're very progressive, is very strong still. And this is just like, it's inescapable. Like being American in America, it's hard to get out of this American exceptionalist like way of thinking. But, once you step away from it, you can start like appreciating that, some places have had these things for a century, like a century. Yeah. Like some of the developments that people like Bernie Sanders are advocating, or Zoran or AOC or any of these people, it's stuff that in the 1960s they had in Europe. Like post World War II, everything's bombed to fuck still. People are just getting off of rations. And like they're like, oh, let's expand the social welfare system to even like way past what was accomplished during the New Deal. And at the time, the New Deal was like profound in many ways, even compared to its European counterparts. But like then people pushed further, and a lot of like the strength of Europe and this way of democracy and living is that you had a much higher level of development of the social democracy before it started getting pulled away. And so if you start at a much higher point, you have a lot more room to free fall before it becomes terminal. And the US started at just a significantly lower point. And you can kind of see this in every European country, like even the most like progressive ones and like advanced ones like Austria are like falling. It just took a very long time, like a decade after everyone else started feeling it. And the UK, it took a little bit longer than the US, but not that much more, because they only really had the NHS as the big difference of those two systems.
Right. And it's been privatizing anyway.
Yeah.
Something that I have noticed in terms of the American exceptionalism debate, or the tendency that I don't think gets mentioned as much, and I think is actually really valuable to think about, is that sometimes you will talk to somebody who's even like really well informed and just knows a lot. A lot of times you'll ask somebody about like, why don't we have nice things, right? And they'll be like, well, America is so big and so diverse, and everybody disagrees.
I hate this argument.
As if that's not the case in every country ever. Like you could have a country with 6 people in it, and you're going to have like 6 different opinions about how things could be run. Like, please understand that every country has political disagreements and people who are very different from each other, and who don't see eye to eye on stuff. Like you cannot just be like, well, Sweden has that because they're all the same guy. Really, it's all Lars, and Lars decided that we can have like socialized healthcare. It's like no, it's not all Lars. Dude.
We had a civilization of 1 million Dolph Lundgrens, we would have public healthcare. No, it doesn't. As you noted, Caitlin, even
Europe famously has never had ethnic conflict.
Yeah, right.
That's right. They never disagree.
Very well known. Very well known.
Never ever.
It happens a lot. It's easy to fall into.
No. But like, I think, this argument is so common and so totalizing. Like we've all heard it a million billion times. You hear the size of the country, the amount of people, the differences political, like
the ethnic makeup.
Or sometimes even if you're in a state that has, mountains and stuff. I'm from Louisiana. I don't have that experience. They'll be like, well, we have so many mountains. We couldn't possibly do that. Ignoring like Switzerland. But it's deeply frustrating.
I can see
silly.
3 mountains from my house right now. And yet.
No socialism for you, Caitlin.
None. 9.
Damn it.
But it's to sell Americans on accepting less.
Right.
Like to feed that American exceptionalism, to do less, to strive for less, to set your pinnacle, I used to call this as like the limitation on your imagination of what is possible, because you create this invisible fishbowl around your mental space of what you think is actually potentially possible, and not just like what could happen, but like any possibility of happening. And by this constant reinforcement that like it can't happen here for XYZ things that don't even have to remotely make any sense, because clearly like more people make a system much more resilient because you have way more fucking taxpayers, guys.
But Hunter,
right?
Freedom in America means that I'm free to not get like communal health insurance. Right? It's like I'm free
it's the
to
freedom to not ever have a cool thing.
Right.
Freedom from healthcare. Those doctors.
Right. I mean, Ted Cruz, after the 2016 election, Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders did a town hall together, which was
who are you saying? Do you mean the Zodiac Killer?
I mean Raphael and Bernie. Yes.
Oh,
I mean,
sorry, I understand his Christian name.
Now we don't know that for sure. Okay. Alleged Zodiac Killer.
They had, right, for legal purposes, they had a town hall, and Ted Cruz, the lawyer, right, rebutted Bernie Sanders' discussion regarding healthcare with language that I always remember because I really think it highlights the Republican and in many ways the American ethos, right? Like in America, he said, you are free to access the best healthcare in the world, right? You are free to access it if, right, you have like money, right? You can access, you are free, but he doesn't like go into the fact that it is not accessible to everyone, and yet that there's a freedom there. The freedom comes with money. If you've got money, you can access the best healthcare in the world, right? But without that money, you have the freedom to die, right? And like this, like strange negative freedom that the Republicans are obsessed about, is I think something that they've sold to the American people effectively. Even though it is like billionaire brain disease. It is like, well, I'm free to not like pay for poor people to have education, right? Like that's not a freedom we should all be basking in and desiring. No?
I mean, I think it was just, it was really genius on their part, right? Like they've figured out this idea of aspirational, right? Like this aspirationalism that seeks to try to achieve the best. And if you can't achieve that, that's more on you. That's like a personal failing. But by knowing that, like, if you are rich, then you get the best things ever. So you should just do that. And honestly, we could have those other things, I guess, but they would be bad. And you don't want those things because they're not the bestie, best. So why would you do that? And it's an insidious kind of trick. I think it just also shows you the kind of where the settlement happened kind of in Europe, where the conservatives realized like they had lost so many battles on these fronts. Like, you could not. You could not try to sell they do still try to sell these American style healthcare systems. Nigel Farage is trying to do it right now in the UK. Right. But the reality is, it's like once people start clicking on it, they're like, wait a fucking minute. Like, whoa. No, not my NHS.
I'm free to pay premiums. I don't want to be free to pay premiums. That's not a freedom I want. I want the freedom to like be able to go and get doctor help without having to pay out of pocket costs.
Well, it's like what J.D. Vance said about his wife for some reason, which is that she's free to skydive, but she doesn't because they agreed that nobody should be jumping out of planes.
That one made me feel so bad on the inside when I read.
What the fuck is happening in your house, JD?
Crazy stuff going on in JD Vance's house. That Onion article that I sent you about JD Vance is not so far off. Okay, not so far off. We'll include that link in the.
One of those kids is going to write a crazy biography.
Oh my God, your mouth.
And hopefully Ron Howard will direct it as a movie.
He did.
Footage not found.
But I want to actually touch on two other points in that New York Times article that I think like refute really like the underlying case. So a little ways later in the article, they talk about how like Peter Magyar avoided like social issues and this was good. And they even highlight like he didn't attend the big Budapest Pride rally. And I think this goes back to what I was saying earlier, that there's two things going on at the same time. There's a widespread popular uprising against Viktor Orban. That's the people who attended the rally. And then there's a guy who's trying to run to get a lot of Viktor Orban's voters to vote for him. Yeah. And those things are occurring at the exact same time.
Right.
Secondly, the idea that you wouldn't think about minorities is absurd when you're talking about Hungarian elections. And this is because there's a lot of Hungarians that live in a lot of other countries, and not just like people who move there, but also like historical Hungarian minorities, like for example, in Romania. And Viktor Orban for many years has put an infinite amount of time and energy and money into trying to make sure he gets almost 100% of those communities. Some of it's nice. Some of it is also threatening people. And this is also very bad. But you also saw in this election, he failed there as well. Like there was efforts to go after these people. There was a huge push to get every Hungarian everywhere involved in the task of defeating Viktor Orban. And so it's just that you have to do this all pistons firing thing. Like I think so many times there's this, it's you either have to do A or B, and these are exclusive things, instead of understanding that you need to talk to a lot of audiences and you need to present things that those audiences want to see. The strongest and most I think correct take of what he was campaigning on was Peter Magyar took everything that was popular that Viktor Orban was doing and kept it, and everything that was not popular, he changed the position on. And this is what he ran on. Would this work in the US in a direct copy paste? I do not think so. Because in his situation, he needed to present himself in the theater of this moment as the literal anti-Orban on every level, on every single spectrum you could imagine. Right? And obviously he needs to present himself to a lot of Orban people because he needs those people to end up voting for him. And so he would talk about the things that Orban talked about that they also liked. And so this is the calculus. It's policy A is liked by the people still, so I will have policy A and talk about policy A because I need to get them to believe in me and talk about this stuff. And the other side that I think is not as touched on, but I think is something that Americans should really think about is a lot of, Peter Magyar's success was going into rural regions and campaigning there, making campaign stops in every single district in the whole country. This would be quite impossible for a single person to do in the US. But how would you do this with some sort of stump person to do an equivalent level speech? How would you strategically organize so that you made sure that you had a campaign event in every single area in the entire country? This is a very big logistical hurdle. And yes, it's a bit easier in Hungary as a much smaller country, but this is the kind of level of campaign you have to think about.
For some insights, we can look at Caro's Johnson biographies, actually, because while it is Texas during the 1930s, we can extrapolate that out to the nation and say, how would we do this? Well, it would take a lot of work. It would take helicopters, it would take airplanes, it would take coordination, it would take large on the ground movements. In Johnson's case across Texas, in our case across the states, but it could be done. And I think to your point,
but how does this differ from what we already have as our traditional kind of campaign pattern, where they go to Nebraska and they go to, they go stand in front of a grain mill or whatever, and they're look at this silo. I definitely have seen one of these before. This is something that they've this is something that is already understood to be something you gotta do, right? Is go to different types of places and be look at me here. Don't I look natural here? Look at me shaking your hand. Look at me listening to your concerns. That's campaigning.
Yeah, but it's the volume. I think it's so it's not just like I go to Nebraska once because the primary's there, and I want to get those like 4 electoral, delegates to my national convention. It's more like, okay, Nebraska has like 12 regions, and I need to go to all 12 of those regions.
Yes,
and then it would be really just ballooning the amount
you
of
can't
stuff.
just go to Omaha and
more.
Lincoln. You can't just go
and not because there's something coming up that you need.
No, you have to just go there because like you are caring about the people of this small town in Nebraska, right? Like those people are important. And I think that the discussion of like flyover states, right, sort of like highlights the need for what Hunter is talking about. We need to like go to the places off the highway as we're driving from Manhattan, Kansas, right? Like you have to go to, so that like some little old lady in a town of 400 people could like tell all of her relatives like the Democratic candidate, like he shook my hand today, like that's the type of shit that Johnson was doing in the 30s in Texas Hill Country, right? And we can learn from those things.
Sort of a Mamdani approach where it's like every single day I am showing you a video of me being literally outside where people are.
Yes.
And I mean, Magro did this thing, and this is good. I don't know. I think it's a smart like comms thing. I'm not sure politically if it's like the best thing ever, but he would go into these villages and he would have a Hungarian flag over his shoulder and would just like walk through. People would be like, oh, what's going on with this dude with the flag? And then you'd go give a speech, a stump speech in like tiny villages of like a couple hundred people or less. And then people would come in and be like, whoa, that was a crazy thing. Like, I can't believe we had a big campaign event here, like in my village that has never seen a campaign event ever. And because he also started this, like, we have to think like this is like 2-year kind of like track that was running, the second he kind of like pops off, he's just like basically running from that point on. So you would have to think about like how you would do this level of like intensity, basically like the intensity of like the Iowa caucuses, but like for every single state. And and this is why I think like attaching in this idea of like all the other people running in that theoretical primary having to add to this to achieve this level of thing. Like it would be a 50 states plus all the territories level of mobilization in every county and parish across the whole country. And you would need to make sure like it was nonstop all the time. This is also why like him being a much younger person, just like Zoran was with his, like, he ran a office in every single district, whatever ward in New York. Like, you have to have that like level of myopia to be able to build out your campaign. And not only that, you obviously have to have like people to staff these areas and to come out and to organize these things. So it's about building like an infrastructure that's significantly bigger than even like the Obama 50 state strategy. This is like a 10,000 county strategy, and this is what we're doing, and we're going to throw a lot of time and energy into this. Like, maybe, like, if I'm thinking about this, like, in how to like tease this out strategically, like maybe this is a thing of like, we don't campaign in any Democratic states. We go so heavy on all the other ones because it's also like because it's not also just like the people there, right? So like there'll be content coming out of that. A bunch of individuals will post stuff. You'll see a town that kind of looks like your town. Right. So like we have to think in like a really strong way of like, how do you replicate this in a very big country? This is a situation where America being very, very large, it becomes a bit of a problem.
That actually
like,
is
you
a
can
challenge.
You can do one event in a big city because people can come into that one central location and blah, blah, blah. But you're going to have to physically go to smaller towns and villages. Like, and this is, I think, the difficult part. And I think it's a lot of what both the Republicans and the Democrats have kind of failed on is like, they thought that digital advertising and media advertising is a good replacement for physical people going there to perform. And I think from like my state, like Huey Long, like the reason that man became like our living God was because he was like out there giving real speeches. And if not him, one of his allies were out there. And like, there's something about that live performance, that communion with a person politically that is able to kind of break forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so let's get into this. I just wanted to highlight the initial sentence that like this whole idea was introduced by, because it's like just dripping with contempt, right? So the second lesson may be harder for Democrats and center-left parties in Europe to absorb. Like, you know what is hard to absorb is your attitude right now. So yeah, Mr. Magyar, who identifies as center-right, won partly by avoiding the social progressivism that dominates elite left-leaning circles and alienates many voters. Let's again just quickly roll that beautiful bean footage of that pride parade in Budapest. Right. Okay. He ran as an economic progressive and a cultural moderate, if not conservative. Like, yes, we know he was in the Conservative Party. Like, that was not a secret. And also, like, people voted for him not because of those positions, but despite them. Because what was this a referendum on? Whether or not Orban sucks.
Correct.
Also, it's important to recognize that it's not that he ran on bread and butter issues and won. He ran on putting those motherfuckers in jail. Like that is what he ran on. Like, that is why he won.
Where is that in this article?
We need to run on that too.
Yeah. Who is promising vengeance and hellfire, and who is promising to clean house and like
absolutely
actually spray the perimeter so that they don't come back?
Smoked like brisket.
That's what we want.
Yes, that's what we want.
Smoke them like
whoever
backyard
becomes
brisket.
president is on a 4-year clock to make sure that they are not in place to come back into power again. Like, that is just
Yes.
That's right.
the main thing. And like, I have a lot of things that need to get done in America. A lot of things need to change. But also, like, if the only thing the next president did was put every motherfucker in jail, that would be one of the greatest presidents of all time. We'd
be on our way. Yeah.
like, I mean, for realsies.
Yes. Yes.
And I think it's also understanding like what level Peter Magyar and Tiza will need to do. We're talking like they will probably need to pass a new constitution for Hungary, or to have multiple constitutional referendums and constitutional changes to be able to untwist some of the fuckery that has happened. Like that is the level of change that has to occur, and have to occur really, really fast. And so this is the ambition level that candidates for president in 2028 need to have. They have to not only go after these people for the criminal actions they've done, but they also have to reform the government in such profound ways in a very swift amount, which also goes back to like, you have to vote as hard as you possibly can, because we need 2/3 of the states to be able to get the levels of changes we need. You need to give the party who takes over the tools, which is the majorities they need to govern in the level that they need to. And also the politicians from those parties and those parties themselves need to be able to be willing to make those changes.
We cannot have Chuck Schumer. We cannot have Harry Reid. We cannot have Hakeem Jeffries. We need to have people who can put the pedal to the metal, that can boogie, that can get some stuff done, that can go on the attack, on the offensive. I am
this is
positive on that.
This is where that op-ed is really insidious, because it is literally trying to take all of the air out of that tire, specifically the fight, the who's a fighter tire, because they're saying like, oh, well, he, the great thing about Magyar, the thing that really catapulted him to victory is that he didn't touch all that yucky progressive stuff. He didn't go to the Pride March in Budapest. And you know what that did? It made it harder for Mr. Orban to paint him as captive to LGBTQ activists, like fuck it did, right? Because you can be the most centrist politician in the history of centrism. You can never say the word trans in your whole goddamn life. What are they going to do to you? They're going to be like, that commie, transsexual loving like monster, right? It doesn't matter how carefully you avoid touching the yucky trans and queer and brown and poor, whatever. Like, it does not matter. It will not save you.
Correct.
And so promising to potential candidates for 2028 that if they just avoid endorsing LGBTQ rights, that they will be safe from being tarred by that particular attack is a lie. And we know it to be a lie at this point. And it is setting you up for failure, because who actually gets people's energy excited in America? It's the Pritzkers who are like, don't come at me with your anti-trans stuff. I am not interested in it. I think that people have dignity, and I'm going to continue to stand up for all of my constituents. That's who gets people excited.
Absolutely. And we don't need the Democratic Party to be trying to hide our supporters. We do not need to be trying to hide our people away like they're a problem. All right. This is exactly why when people say that the Democratic Party isn't really for transgender people, isn't really for gay people, isn't really for all of these groups that institutions suggest we should perhaps try to hide behind the curtain. Well, this is why people get mad about that. Okay, because when you are suggesting that we hide people away, well, it does reek of the idea that you'd be willing to throw X group under the bus if it means that we'll get voted in. And not only is that cynical, but as Caitlin just noted, it's flat out wrong. It's flat out incorrect.
Doesn't work.
No.
And every time we send a news crew out to talk to just like regular ass people who are out, just trying to live their lives, and you ask them about things like immigrants or queer people or whatever, the answer just tends to be like, I don't like seeing them treated like that. That's the most human response possible. And that is what you should be capitalizing on, is people look around them and they see like this person was forced to go to the DMV to change her driver's license to male because of a law. I don't like seeing her looking that degraded, right? Coming out of that office, having had to do that. This person had their grandpa dragged out of his house in his underwear because he happens to be from another country. Like, I don't like seeing people treated that way either. I will vote for whoever stops this kind of thing from happening. That's energizing, and it is already in us as human people. And so it's easy to bring out,
Also, if you're trying to shift the cultural hegemony away from Trumpism and these things being considered normal, like right. that is the battle. Like that is how you do it, by being strongly pro-migrant, strongly pro-trans, strongly pro-woke as fuck, y'all. Like that's just like the way to do things. And we have to understand, like in the US, we got 2.5 more years of this guy, which means there's a lot of time and energy to pushing people's thoughts and ideas around these things, and also attaching MAGA attacks on certain people to the broader project of destroying MAGA. Because right. that was the connection Hungarians were able to make. Like regular Hungarians in a country that is very, very not supportive of gay people were able to be like, oh, he's going after these people because like it convinces me not to think he's fucking me. Like he's stealing from my children. And so he makes me angry at the trans people. So, and they're like, poof. And that's how you get hundreds of thousands of people in a tiny country to show up at an illegal rally and get fined because they're like, you know what? I'm not letting this guy control my life. And this is
I'm not interested in the scapegoating. I don't want to play.
Right.
Yeah. 1,000%. And it's not about convincing Trumpers that they were wrong, because that's not the issue. There's a lot of people who just don't vote in the US, but it's about convincing everyone else that we're right. And that is a big difference. Mm-hmm. And that the way that we see the world, the way that they use people's identities as fodder to make you look away from the incredible corruption of the government and the people in power, or the people who have monetary control of our system. Like this is it. Like, and in a small way, like the Epstein files is very much like a very similar case to like the pedophilia scandal in Hungary that kicked off like Magyar's career. Like it's weird to talk about and take as like a very important like rallying thing, but like this is a clear example of like, this is our elite. They're very corrupt and shitty. Yeah. Like, let's lean into that. And if a party is able to kind of galvanize this idea that like our shitty elite should not be so shitty, like they can do big things. They can convince people to change things. Unfortunately, we have the people who are.
I'm here to stop the abuse of power is so powerful, right?
Right. And like, if you look back in American history and democratic history, you see like people who were intensely anti-corruption, people who were against the gross abuses of power, are the people who end up getting elected. And then when they're elected, they are able to do profound things. look at FDR, look at all these like characters, even in like mainstream American politics. This isn't like a wow moment or something new. This is just how things are.
But you know how obvious this is, Hunter? Donald Trump knew that, right? That's drain the swamp. Is knowing that. I mean, it's just what a skilled politician would appraise a circumstance and say, this is the thing that I should hit on, right? Is that there's corruption, people aren't doing the thing right, I could do the thing better, we could do the thing better, boom, right? If only we had the political savvy, right, to be like, look at the most corrupt administration in the history of the United States, more corrupt even than the Harding administration, than the Grant administration, right? This is like insanity. We got to knock these people out. They're all going to prison, right? That should be the rhetoric. And yet, well, I think we're going to get it here at the midterms.
Here's what we get instead. Here's another paragraph that's going to raise your blood pressure. Are you ready? So, on immigration, which has shaped recent elections around the world, Mr. Magyar called for even tighter restrictions than the Orban had government imposed. I'm not sure that that's how that sentence is supposed to be, but okay. Even tighter restrictions than the Orban had government imposed.
The New York Times, people, the paper of record.
The editorial board, ladies and gentlemen. He said he would keep a border fence, repeal a guest worker program, and allow no guest workers from outside the European Union. Tisha's party platform claimed that guest workers drive down wages, inflate real estate prices, and cause social problems. That's J.D. Vance right there. He said that too. Yeah. Unlike in the United States, crime rates among immigrants in Europe tend to be higher than among native citizens. So they're just like, what can we say? Immigrants are criminals. Thanks, NYT. Immigration is vital to electability in many countries because it is the issue on which mainstream politicians have most sharply diverged from public opinion, permitting many more arrivals than voters want.
I like how public opinion.
So then they have a to be sure. We love it to be sure. Yeah. We certainly do not endorse all of Mr. Magyar's tactics, and we hope no American politician would feel the need to avoid a pride march. Yet anyone who opposes Orbanism should examine the full Hungarian campaign, not only the convenient parts. Excuse me. I just, that was a hard sentence to finish.
I mean, they're right on some level. Like, I think the main critique right now is that, this guy is really anti-migration. But it goes back to what I was saying before. This is very popular in Hungary because there's been 16 years of media convincing Hungarians, and not just in Hungary, but across Europe, that migration is bad and migration is destroying things. Even though, and this is what any expert that you'll see talking about this today and yesterday will sell you, like, because so many Hungarians left Hungary because of Viktor Orban, they desperately need humans in Hungary to do things. Like it doesn't matter. And also at the same time, like, Viktor Orban was like one of those big, like, what are they called? Natalists, like pronatalists, like wanting people to have lots of babies.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And did some pretty wild policies, including one that if you have over 3 children, you have no income tax, which fair is fair. But it didn't work. Like most of these policies don't work.
Right.
And fundamentally, like, they need people, they need adult people to work in that country. So if Magyar actually does that, it would be very bad for the Hungarian economy and just like regular function,
correct,
basic services in Hungary.
1,000%.
I think the other side of this, though, and this is the part that I think I'm a bit more concerned about, because I don't think domestically he can do much more. Like, they have very strict immigration in Hungary already. Like, it's not like it's going to get any easier or harder. Like, it would have to do some like actually wild stuff after that. But the baseline of where they're at in the European Union. So this is like what's being discussed right now at the European Commission. So for American viewers, there's 3 main sections of the European Union. The executive is called the European Commission. You have a parliament, that's the legislative, and then you also have a court of justice. So the executive side of this, the Commission, has been pushing forward on some pretty draconian immigration measures, stuff that is equivalent to what Trump is pushing, with ideas to set up the same types of deportation camps and that's already been passed, but also like the same kinds of ICE deportations of like mass deportation. This is like the normal position for normal right-wing parties in Europe now. So even if Magyar just supports the party line of his European political party, the European People's Party, that's the party that currently controls the European Commission with Ursula von der Leyen coming from the CDU. This is the German Conservative Party. If he just supports the thing they already want to do, that's incredibly dangerous. That's Trump level, ICE deportations levels of dangerous. And this is why I think lots of people, especially in Brussels and across the European institutions, are thinking like, this could also be very bad because like it's not like we're getting something different. So this is a legitimate thing, but I think it goes back to the reality that like these ideas were made popular. There is a common truism amongst most politicians and most parties that the way you deal with the far right is you just get really fucking shitty with trans people and immigrants. And that is just shared amongst a lot of political parties around the world. This is not true. And that opinions can be much more easily changed. And we've seen this very swiftly in the United States, for example. The ICE deportations, once people see what it is actually like, they immediately flip. They're like, whoa, wait, this is not what I meant by protected borders.
Didn't like that, actually.
Right. And so it's like, this is the danger, is that the mainstream of European politics has moved so significantly to the far right, and that the current like far right-wing coalition governing the EU it's doing these things already. So it's not so much like Magyar as an individual is going to be out of step and do something more extreme. It's that the mainstream is very extreme right now. And this is the problem itself.
It's that he didn't lose people by sticking to this like sort of mainstream position, right? But like what would have happened if he had been more chill on those issues? Hard to say, right? Because this was like you say, this was a larger thing than just Hungary. Like this is like, and also, they're coming off the back end of decades of, propaganda, generally like, this kind of misinformation campaign that makes you feel scared of queer people, of immigrants. And I think that, they're really in danger, Democrats in America, of taking the wrong lesson from this, partly because we've already seen a big shift in attitudes on those questions, but also because, like you say, between now and 2028, there's a lot more that could happen. And that a good politician can facilitate that change and like could do a lot better if they successfully pull that off than if they just sort of like sat back and said like, I do agree there's really a crisis at the border and we do need to do more to make sure to secure, our borders and keep people out. No,
this is why we are the as of now, the pro Pritzker podcast because
stop saying his name. It could be anyone.
It could be anyone, as anyone who wants to be a part of the solution.
We're the pro progressive. Yeah.
I'm surprised that you haven't said he's the Great Khan yet.
That'll come once the Great Khan gets picked. We are open to whoever, but we need people who stand up and say, we're protecting our brothers and sisters. We are not throwing them under the bus. We're not scapegoating them. We're not scared of the fascists. We're not scared of the blowback from ignorance and hatred. And if you're not strong enough to do that, then I don't think you're strong enough to be the Democratic nominee for president.
Yeah, it's not very tough of you to be like, actually, what he said is kind of right.
Absolutely.
The one caveat I'd make on what you just said, Caitlin, is that I would say that LGBTQ issues actually became a non-issue because of like big events like the Pride demonstration, right? So, and even in his rhetoric, he would just like not talk about it. So like it was not that he would present the talk about the opposite side of a hot button issue, he would do whatever it took to avoid talking about these things. So he would omit these things
like,
out of his campaign profile.
Kind of like Kamala Harris did then, right? Where like, unless pressed, she didn't bring it up. And then, you know, somebody would be like, excuse me, that ACLU questionnaire from 4 years ago.
I think it's a bit different because she was attached to a government that did have positions. Right? So he gets to not make a position, and then there's nothing you can go look for, right? There's no government, like there's no like, well, then your position is Joe Biden's position. It's like, he's just like, I'm not giving you a position. That's it, baby. Like, sorry.
Yeah.
But
to which people can infer a status quo, right? Of like, well, okay, then I guess no change, right?
Strategic ambiguity, right? And also, so this is a very gut take, so don't take this as a scientifically based one. But I would say that I think there was, so the two main issues that were like things he leaned in on because they were so unpopular was like, he made it explicitly clear that he wasn't going to change Hungary's Ukraine position, because Ukraine is just like very unpopular. There's been just like wildly intense propaganda, especially during this last election against Zelensky, Ukraine in general, lots of pro-Russian stuff. Like it's thick. And I don't mean just like on social media. I mean like big ass billboards everywhere and posters. Like it's absurd. But, you know, he was like, okay, I have to avoid taking any strong Ukraine position, and I need to avoid making myself look weak on immigration. Right. And for the most part, he's running a campaign that's centered around getting rural districts to support him. Right. So this would be like you running an electoral strategy of the US of like, I need to get Nebraska. I need to get North and South Dakota, like a very untraditional kind of campaign that doesn't really connect to the US because of the electoral college. Like it's very difficult to make this like comparison. But this is like his electoral strategy, right? He was just like, I'm going to damage Viktor by heavily focusing on rural districts where he's the strongest. Even if I don't win them, I mean, it means he has to put more assets and time into like keeping stuff. And that's just as good as anything else. Right. So that's like the logic of it. So it's this idea that like, if I stay away from hot button issues and then maximize my intensity on everything else, and especially these guys will go to jail, I will do economically good things. I will be good with the EU, because also that's like a big thing. Like the European Union, like him taking a very pro EU stance was a huge part of his campaign. Right. And this is something that I think it is very difficult for Americans to have like a conceptual idea of this, because it would be like, I don't even understand, like know how you would compare this. It'd be like, your presidential candidate saying like, I'm very pro federal government. Like we should engage with the federal government. Like the federal government should do things for us and we should do things for them. And like, but that's like the level of equivalency I'm talking about. And they've been there for 16 years of a guy who ran the country who was like, fuck the federal government. I don't want to do anything they do. I don't care if I'm losing billions and billions and billions of euros worth of funding. Like I hate those people. So like that level of sea change is just, it's hard to understate. And so when, you know, the main things, it's like, don't talk about unpopular things, be super pro-European, maximize your, you know, I will have justice and vengeance for all of the people in this country. And then at the same time, making sure that you're also giving an economic message that makes people feel like there's some future. And that's really easy because so many things have been dismantled in Hungary or like warped to no end. In a very similar way to the US, right? Like a lot of these 2028 candidates, I think they haven't wrapped their heads around the idea that they're coming into a husk of the US government. They're coming into a system that's been so hit with a baseball bat every day for the last year and a half that like it's going to take a very long time and a lot of vision to figure out like, how do I rebuild this thing that was built over literally the last like century almost? And that's,
and it can't just be rebuilt to what it was. It has to be rebuilt better than it was, because
it was vulnerable before.
Because how it was how we got Trump. So you're right. It's going to take whoever ends up being the individual. It's going to take somebody with a vision. And I think this is actually something that goes well with what we've spoken about before, which is that Democrats need to sell an actual vision. right? Not just we're not him and he's bad, but we need to sell a vision of what the country looks like. Like, I don't know, like a Teddy Roosevelt did, like a Franklin Roosevelt did, right? Like even a Harry Truman did. We need to sell a vision, and the person who's going to be able to sell that vision will luckily have the vision to then take office and do the reconstruction. And certainly
sort of a build back better on steroids kind of a situation.
Yeah. Or I was even thinking about like Harris's like we're not going back thing, but it's like you have to say that and then I have to believe you mean it to the most extreme end.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Is there's some trust that got lost over the course of the Biden administration in terms of we campaigned on that guy is an aspiring fascist and we have to get him out. But then the sort of like the mechanisms didn't get ripped up when he got out of the door, right? And so he was able to roll back in and reassert. And so like they do actually, whoever it is, needs to focus a little bit of energy on saying, we mean it this time. We have a concrete plan to get it done.
I mean, and honestly, I think this is like the biggest radioactive thing to start talking about in American politics is that there can't be a Republican Party. The conservatives need a new party. They can form one. That's fine. But like the Republican Party is a criminal organization that tried to overthrow the Republic once, and then they turned it into the most corrupt entity on earth. I mean, this is like the reality of the situation. And that's fundamentally the big takeaway from Hungary is that like Hungarians don't want there to be a Fidesz in the future. Like it does not exist.
Wow, it's so cool. It's so cool that you're thinking about the whole picture and not just cherry picking, you know, the convenient parts. You know, the New York Times would be so happy with you.
That's why I make the medium bucks.
That's why. That's right. No, I heard that the reason the lesson that we should really pick from this is that the voters are unhappy with an elite cultural progressivism that has moved rapidly to the left on many difficult questions. I think that's the main takeaway, right, guys? I'm so tired.
I'm sorry, but I think it had a lot more to do with they wanted the people that pardon pedophiles to go to jail.
Literally, could we have that? Yeah, and like anybody who facilitated the fascist power grab that we're living through right now, like they are barred from participating in the future of our country. I'm so sorry, but you disqualified yourself.
Not my fault.
You did it to you, my friend.
Nationalize SpaceX.
And dude,
nationalize Amazon.
Feels good just to say.
Let's give me more. It feels good. Yeah, so that would be so cool if we could do that. Honestly, I'm with you on the whole Republican Party no longer exists. Like, not every Republican needs to be prevented from participating in the future politics of our country. However, that organization, that's a criminal organization, like you said.
Correct.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And it's not just like the party itself, it's all its sub entities, it's all these things around it. Like that this is what the discourse has been like the last day and a half. And today, or I guess like last night, I don't know, time zones, but Magyar came out saying like, I'm gonna defund the MCC. This is Orban's think tank that gets the equivalent of 1% of the Hungarian budget right now, which I did not believe was a real statistic. But then I looked it up and I was like, oh God, everything's way worse than I thought it was. But he literally was like, we're not going to be paying for things like CPAC anymore. And I was like, yeah, my dude, like this is the thing.
Yes.
There are a lot of the organizations that have been making our lives worse here in the United States are about to lose some dollars because of this. And that is amazing news, right? It's CPAC, it's the Danube Institute or whatever, National Conservatives. It's not as formal of a relationship that they have with the Heritage Foundation, right? But there is some interplay there that like should get disrupted, which is wonderful.
Oh yeah, I mean MCC is like super tied into a bunch of these like efforts. I mean they're deep in that CPAC world, but the other side is like at least on like my side of the hemisphere, we have National Conservative Conference is like a big deal, and it's co-funded and co-organized by Netanyahu's Likud party and also Viktor Orban's party, and that's been like a major mover and shaker. I would say like the last 3-4 years or so. Right. But yeah, I mean it's. There's been a huge victory. This is awesome. A lot of their funding is going to get torn up. Doesn't mean it's going to go away because there's a lot of rich people backing these things, right, so that they can find funding from other sources. But huge things have happened. People were able to vote harder than anyone's ever voted before and get rid of their dictator in a way that could be permanent if the leadership they've just put in is willing to go the full distance. And that is going to take a lot of work, right, a lot of effort, a lot of time, and a lot of support from both, their own party, but also like civil society as a whole, other political parties, and make sure that people stay focused. Hungarians need to stay focused and make sure the Magyar government, the TISA government, does the things it promised it was going to do. They need to push them as hard as they protested against Orban, because that is the only way things get done. If we
keep them scared,
right? If we do the same thing in the US that we did with George W. Bush, where we were like, okay, Obama's got it, I can check out now. Or when Biden comes in, it's like, Biden's got it, I can check out now. We will never get out of this rut. Right. It has to be a whole of society effort to change the country. It cannot be some high official upon high, just like giving down blessings. That's not how the world works in 2026. It's not going to be how the world works in 27 or 28 either. Every election matters, every victory matters, and how much you win by. It is not enough to get 51%. We need to be shooting for these high percentages so that we are able to, once we are empowered, to change things on a fundamental level. That means not just on the federal level, but also on the state level and your local level as well. This means you have to work hard to change America, because it can be an incredible place and much magical place than it is right now by just implementing some of the stuff that was done 100 years ago in other countries. And then it can go beyond that in the future, which is what I hope to see. And we can make that happen.
We can do it. Let's go. All right. Nice job. Well, you heard it here first. A big resounding bye bitch to Orban and Hunter for president 2028. That's right. So excited. You got my vote, buddy.
Absolutely.
Well, absolutely. We can celebrate and we can keep our heads down and we can keep working. I believe in us. And you know what they say about this and answers and how much of it there is. This has been Half the Answer, where understanding a question is half the answer. And we love you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Half the Answer, presented by Liberal Currents. You can find Half the Answer anywhere you get your podcasts. Liberal Currents is an entirely listener and subscriber-funded publication, which includes programs like Half the Answer and Neon Liberalism. So, if you like what you've heard and wish to contribute, you may do so at liberalcurrents.com and through Patreon. And remember, understanding a question is half the answer.